Shalom, Israel, Most High in Christ blessed. Blessed Sabbath. Once again, my name is Brother Zerubbabel,
And I'm Measures Elazar.
and we are here again um, to bring another lesson out to the body of Israel. Um, Again, this is another important lesson that our people need to learn, um, simply for the fact that a lot of people completely misunderstand um, what being the temple of God actually means. You hear people say it all the time in reference to, well, the name of this lesson is called Know Ye Not that Ye Are the Temple of God. And there's a lot of confusion as to who or what this is talking about. So we're going to have to bring out a lesson um, to bring out in detail what exactly the scriptures mean when it says that ye are the temple of God. Because you've got Christians believing that they are the temple of God. You've got Jehovah's Witnesses believing they are the temple of God. You've got Mormons believing they are the temple of God. Um, we're going to watch a few minutes of a video also because you've got the Jews over in Israel trying to build a third temple because they don't understand the how can I put it, the prophecy about the third temple, that they believe that the third temple is a actual physical building of a third temple before Christ comes back. That's not what it's talking about. Um, so we're going to go through it, and that's why we got to go through this lesson, because a lot of our people have a misunderstanding about what it means to be the temple of God. Some of them have an understanding that, oh, you're defiling your temple. You're smoking, you're drinking, you're doing drugs, you're defiling your temple. But beyond that, they really don't have any real clue of what it's talking about um, when it comes to being the temple of God. Um, so we're going to clear it up today. I'm just going to warn you, this is going to be a very long lesson. There's going to be lots of reading because, yes, we do like to read. Um, no one cannot accuse us of cherry picking and that we don't read in context, because we do read, and we read a lot because the reading is needed, um, especially to bring context and understanding to some of these topics. Not all topics need this much reading, and even with this one, we could do what a lot of people do. We could just skip to the last third or quarter or whatever it is of the lesson and break it down, what it means to be the temple of God. But going to be doing you a disservice. Going to go through history of the prior temples. We're going to go through the history of the tabernacle being built. Um, the tabernacle, the first temple, which was Solomon's temple, the destruction of the temple, the rebuilding of the temple, Christ's prophecies about the destruction of the temple again. Gonna, go through, the history of Herod's temple. Um, all of this to give you understanding about the building of the temple, why the temple was built, who was instrumental in building the temples or rebuilding the temples. All that history needs to be learned and understood in order to understand exactly what it means to know that ye are the temple of God. You've got to know the history. You've got to read all of this. You got to study. It's real easy to just say, know you not that you are the temple of God. And people say, yeah, my temple, my body, and I can't defile my temple. It's real easy to do. But without bringing understanding to it, context from precepts to it, then to most people it doesn't make sense, especially in the Christian church. And that's what we're going to see today. This is why this lesson is important. This is one of the main reasons why we're bringing it out in the format that we're bringing it out, to combat any Christian that may doubt that when we say the children of Israel are the temple of God, that we are the temple of God. There's no dispute. There's no disputing it. There's nothing that after we're done with this lesson, there's nothing that any Christian, any apologetic, or anybody can say or do except twist scriptures to try and say that we're not the temple of God. Because you have people believing, and especially some of our own people believing this false narrative, this false prophecy, this false doctrine that there's going to be a third temple built in the Holy Land, quote unquote. There's going to be one built, but not because of prophecy that they're getting directly from the scriptures. They're taking prophecies from the scriptures and twisting them. But they're gonna, in order to hide the fact of who we are, they're gonna build a third temple. The devil is fully at work, and that's what we're gonna go through. Just kind of waiting for a minute. We'll go into it. So the first thing that we're going to get into, I'm going to show you an article about the Jews, so-called Jews, already have started constructing this third temple. And you've got some of our people that are ignorant to the fact of what the temple is, or the third temple actually is, that they're going along with this. So let me share the screen. Let me know you can see the screen.
There it is.
Okay. So the first thing, if you want to know what's going on over there in Israel with the Israelis, these people that are over there pretending to be us, it's just that they don't know that they're frauds. The people at the bottom, your average, everyday Joe Schmo, so-called Jewish person, they don't know what's going on. The majority, when you talk to the majority of Jewish people, the majority of them will tell you flat out that they don't even care about the religious aspect of being a Jew. They don't care about it. All they've been brought up is that we're Jewish. Bad things happen to us from Hitler, anti-Semitism. They know the basics. And if you say something that, is disrespectful to them, then they automatically cry anti-Semitism, anti-Semite. That's what they've been raised on. That's all they know. No different than you take a so-called African American, and all they've been, raised on is that, they're black or niggas or Negroes that were brought over here on slave ships. That's all, we've known for hundreds of years. That's all we've got in our brain. So it's no different from them. So in one hand, you really can't fault the average everyday Joe Schmo Jewish person for not having a clue as to what's been going on. You know what I mean? They've just happily accepted that, they're God's people, they're Jewish, You know what I mean? There's something that they think is special about them because that's what they've been brought up in. The majority of them don't have any clue about going back into history and learning about Zionism and how Zionism started, and the fact that it was Zionists that were behind, this whole fiasco of getting back into the homeland, our homeland, taking it over from the Palestinians, and creating this whole situation that's going on over there. So can't fault them. It's the people at the top. Your average everyday Joe Schmo, friendly neighborhood Edomite Jewish person. They have no clue what's going on. So Lord's wills, they will open their minds up and become educated or edumacated, and come to realize that they've been lied to. That's about the only thing that can happen. They're either going to come to the understanding that they've been lied to by their forefathers, or they're going to let pride get in the way and fight tooth and nail to keep the lies going. But if you want to know what's going on, this is called Israel 365 News. So you could go on this channel, go to this website, and any major news that's going on over there, usually gets posted on here. So you know what I mean? If you want to, see what's going on over in the Holy Land, like some of the articles, U.S. funded Palestinian school held ceremony celebrating terrorists who murdered Jews. And you're going to start to see it. There's going to be a lot of, and it's already started. What do you call it? Propaganda. There's a lot of propaganda that's starting to pop up. You're going to see it. In fact, there was a couple of articles that just popped up yesterday about some dude in LA supposedly going and shooting up a Jewish synagogue in LA. And then there was another story. I forget what that story is about. I'll look them up later as we go through the lesson. But this kind of propaganda you're starting to see get ramped up as more and more of the truth of who we are is coming out. Because that's just what they do. They're liars. You know what I mean? There's no way of sugarcoating it. They may call you anti-Semite, anti-Semitism, but we cannot be anti-Semites because we are Shemitic. So that whole argument gets thrown out. But I'm going to go to this article that is here on this Israel 365. It says Jews begin building third temple on Israel Independence Day. And then, they got a quote here from Samuel 7:5. Go and say to my servant David, thus said Hashem, are you the one to build a house for me to dwell in? And you can see this is from May 6, 2022. So it reads, while most Israelis were celebrating Independence Day by having family barbecues, a small group gathered in the old city of Jerusalem and began chipping away at stones, preparing them to be used to build the prophesied third temple. So this prophecy they're taking from the book of Ezekiel. As we go through, you'll see that that's where they're getting it from. So the event was organized by Rabbi Uriah Lipo, who envisioned it while on his way to the funeral of Rabbi Chaim Kanifsky. In March, Lipo ascends to the Temple Mount on a daily basis when the Israeli police permit Jews to enter, but was deliberating with a friend which was more important, to attend the funeral of Zadik, righteous Jew, or to ascend to the Temple Mount. To honor Rabbi Kanifsky, he and a friend were learning halakhic, Torah law, halishik, I don't know how you pronounce it, Torah law, ruling written by Rabbi Kanifsky, in which he stated that the stones for the temple had to be cut by Jews with the intention of honoring God's name. We have a mitzvah, Torah commandment to build the temple. This mitzvah is not conditional or time bound. We have this requirement at all times. So it is a pity that we are not actively engaged in it. Right now, it is politically complicated for us to begin building on the Temple Mount, but that does not exempt us from this mitzvah. Rabbi Lippo realized that it was possible to begin to actually perform this mitzvah by preparing the stones that will be used to build the third temple. He explained that Rabbi Moses ben Maimon, the medieval Torah authority known as Maimonides, or by the acronym Rambam, taught that the stones for the temple building were cut outside of the Temple Mount and transported to the Temple Mount. Once on the Temple Mount, it was forbidden to use iron tools to form the stones. It was, of course, forbidden to use iron tools at any stage to form the stones for the altar. As an aside, Rabbi Lippo has already begun collecting stones for the altar. Rabbi Lippo cited Rabbi Zvi Yehuda Kook, who in 1937 wrote an article relating to Ezekiel's vision of the Jews' return to Zion. And I will give you a new heart and put a new spirit into you. I will remove the heart of stone from your body and give you a heart of flesh. Ezekiel 36:26. Which is kind of funny because in the, talk about the vision of the Jews' return to Zion. Who is it that's returning? Is it America and Europe? Or is it the Most High in Christ that's going to do it? And people don't take the time, to read, to understand. You know what I mean? It's a shame that our people could get hoodwinked into believing these lies. I'll read on. It said, there are hearts and there are hearts, Rabbi Cook wrote. There are human hearts and there are hearts of stone. There are stones and there are stones. There are silent stones and there are stones which are hearts. These stones, remnants of our dwelling on high, retain their holiness even in desolation. Megillah 3:3. For the Shekinah has never left the western wall. Tanhuma Shemot 10. These stones are our hearts. All right. It's a quite lengthy article. It says, in order to perform the mitzvah properly, Rabbi Lippo had to consult with several rabbis who were expert in issues concerning the temple because of its politically sensitive nature, an aspect some rabbis consider when ruling about the Tent Mount and Third Temple. There are normally vastly divergent views regarding such issues. All of the rabbis we consulted agreed that we should begin preparing the stones, Lippo said. This wasn't just a physical action to produce dressed stones. We had to be very careful about our intentions. Of course, this was not a political statement. The intention was to unify the Jews and all of the world in making God one and his name one. But you see how they can become unified? All it takes is for one of these rabbis to make a decree, say something, and they all just get behind it. Says it was for this reason that they chose to begin forming the stones for the third temple on Yom Ha'atzmaut, Israel's Independence Day. Rabbi Lippo cited commentaries that explained that when God appeared to Moses at the burning bush, he told Moses that the reason for bringing the Jews out was in order to serve him in Jerusalem. And he said, I will be with you. That shall be your sign, that it was I who sent you. And when you have freed the people from Egypt, you shall worship Hashem at this mountain. Exodus 3:12. The unifying identity of the Jewish people is expressed in the temple in Jerusalem. Rabbi Lippo explained, on this day, 74 years ago, Israel became a state, but the essence of the nation is the temple in Jerusalem. So you got to think. It's been 70, now what is it? This was 2022, going into 2023. Now it's been about 75 years since they put these people back, put these people in that land. So as I was stating earlier, You know what I mean? You can't fault the average everyday Joe Schmo Jewish person for not knowing what's going on. You know what I mean? That they truly believe now that they are the people of the land, because some of them have now lived there, been born there, grew up there, and that's all they've known. So for all of a sudden, you having all these Black, Hispanic, and Native American people rising up on the internet and on the corners and saying, "No, we are the children of Israel." It's something they can't fathom. They can't, it's the last thing in their mind that they would ever believe. Um, but reading on, it says most quarries in Israel are operated by Arabs, and they preferred not to use stones from those locations. They collected 23 sizable stones from a field near the community of Ish Kodesh, Holy Fire in Samaria. A contractor from Judea transported the stones to an area near the Herva synagogue in the Old City. Lippo's mother, who was born with the state of Israel 74 years ago, took part enthusiastically, helping to chip away at the stones. Lippo plans on holding more events of this type to prepare more stones for the third temple. Joshua Wonder took part in the event while cutting the stones. Wonder wore tefillin, phylacteries, and had his side arm ready, personifying the prophecy of Nehemiah. As for the builders, each had his sword girded at his side as he was building. The trumpeter stood beside me, Nehemiah 4 and 12. So they truly believe that they are the people that the book is talking about. They're fooling themselves into believing this and, these lies, that they really want to try and, and be the people. This was an important act unto itself and a message to the nation as well as to the world. But it was also a message to Hashem that we were not just sitting around waiting for the Messiah. Wander told Israel 365 News. That completely contradicts what the scriptures say, because he says, "Wait ye upon me." And they're trying to say, you see, we're showing, God, that we're not just sitting around waiting for the Messiah. Which shows you they don't care about keeping no commandments in this book. They don't care about doing nothing God says in this book. Because we had the intention to show that we are actively working to bring the third temple as prophesied and as commanded. What command? Says the current situation in which Israel is a beautifully developed country while the Temple Mount is under the control of the Palestinians is similar to the situation described by the prophet Haggai. It is a time for you to dwell in your paneled houses while the house is lying in ruins. Haggai 1 and 4. The Israel Bible explained a message that is equally relevant today, addressing the Jews who returned to the land of Israel after 70 years of Babylonian exile. Chaggai's mission is to motivate them to resume construction of the Second Temple. He begins by challenging them to reflect on their priorities and to consider what is more important, their comfort or God's. While they dwell in paneled houses, Hashem's house lies in ruins. The Hebrew term for paneled is sufanim. According to some, the panels were made out of cedar wood imported from Lebanon. Shaggai is accusing the people of not learning from King David, who said to the prophet Nathan, "Here I am dwelling in a house of cedar, while the Aaron of Hashem abides in a tent." 2 Samuel 7. David longed to overcome that disparity and build the first Beit HaMikdash, while the Israelites in Shaggai's time are unconcerned. Shaggai tries to break their complacency. The stones are being stored for their intended purpose. So the stones are being stored for their intended purpose for when they decide they're going to storm that that Temple Mount, kill all them Palestinians up there and take it over. Basically, what is coming down to. But we have to do this lesson. Know ye not that ye are the temple of God, because you have some of our people that are falling for they're falling for these lies. So I'm going to go to this video You're only going to watch the first like 5 or 6 minutes of it. It's about an hour long. If you want to go back and watch the rest of it, um, you can look it up on YouTube. The article comes from is a Texas Christian on why she supports the third temple. It says Parthenia Antoine acquired her love for Israel from reading the Bible as a child. She helped to return at least 40 families of Russian Jews to Israel. You see the ignorance of our people? She is a pharmacist and a teacher, but takes the time to visit Israel whenever she can and even spent 3 months living in the Holy Land. Parthenia explains why, as a Christian, she supports the prophesied third temple. Toward that end, she helped prepare the red heifers raised in Texas for their journey to Israel. So if the prophecy supposedly says that there's going to be a red heifer born that hadn't been born for years and years and years, but yet you're going to bring one from Texas to the Holy Land, Texas, coming from Babylon, Mystery Babylon itself, this defiled place, you're going to bring a red heifer from this defiled land to bring over to the so-called Holy Land to fulfill God's prophecy. Makes no sense. But as you can see, this is her. You could already see the problem. Some of our people are too smart for their own good. She, calls herself, she's a self-professed nerd. She liked to read as a child. She's a pharmacist. She's a school teacher. She's, very accomplished in America's system. But you can look at her and see what the issue is. She hates her own people. She hates her own skin tone. She hates her own hair. She hates herself. She has no clue that she's more of a Jew than this dude she's talking to. She's more the temple of God than this temple that she's talking about. She's all for them building. It's crazy. So I'm going to push play. I'm going to stop it here and there.
I don't think there's any audio. Did you play it yet?
Yeah, I push play. You don't hear anything?
No.
Oh, wow. Yeah, I can hear it coming through my speakers. Let me see. You have your thing on mute. See if that works.
This is mute.
All right. Did that help? No.
No.
That's weird. All right. Wait. I hope. Did that help? I turned it up.
I heard the volume go up, but there's no audio still. Play it. Mm-mm.
Even now, you still?
Yeah, no audio.
That's weird. I wonder what they did.
Right.
Try it. Wow. Might have to just cut it out, and if you get a chance to go to YouTube and type in a Texas Christian helping to bring the temple in Jerusalem and watch the video, and listen to this woman here from Texas. She's a so-called African American, so-called black woman that professes her love for Jesus, for his people. That when she learned that Jesus was a Jew, he was Jewish. That's what made her love God's people, and she wanted to do everything she could to help God's people. And one of the things that I was going to show is that this is the reason why, because the Jesus she loves is this dude. That's and when you take a look at her, who is she trying to look like? She hates herself. She hates her people. And I'm sure she has had to have run across some Israelites somewhere, and she would rather be one of those people that refuses to believe that the real Christ of this Bible looks like her. She rather him look like this dude. That's the biggest problem. So we're not going to be able to play the video. I don't know why there's no audio. I think it's something that they probably did on their website. Well, that's beside the point. Let's go to Hebrews 5 and 12 through 14. Basically, in order for our people to not end up like this woman, where they're believing this nonsense, believing these lies, believing this fallacy of, it was commanded by God for the third temple to be built. The physical temple is not the temple that Christ is rebuilding right now. The temple that's being rebuilt is the bringing back together of his people. And we're going to show that as we go through the lesson. But like I said, we're going to have to go through the history. It's going to be a lot of reading. Go ahead and read what you got.
The book of Hebrews, chapter 5 and verse 12. For the time ye ought to be teachers, ye have need that one teach you again, which be the first principles of the oracles of God, and are become such as have need of milk and not of strong meat. For everyone that useth milk is unskillful in the word of righteousness, for he is a babe.
And that goes for these rabbis, these Jewish people over there that are, trying to get understanding of the scriptures. They think that because they can read some form of Hebrew, that puts them above us. They want to try and snicker and laugh at the Israelites over here because, we don't speak Hebrew. They're not even speaking true Hebrew. So, they really can't, have nothing much to say about that. But, they try to, they're attempting to. But in their ignorance, they're actually over there trying to rebuild an actual physical temple when the whole world is seeing the emergence of the true temple of God, with every new Israelite that wakes up from the so-called Black, Hispanic, and Native American community, that wakes up, opens their eyes, and comes to the knowledge that they are an Israelite. You're seeing the building of the temple. What do you think we're doing out there on the corners, on the highways and byways, on the, on YouTube, on the internet? The building of God's temple had begun already years ago, but now it's just starting to come to the forefront. So their uh, understanding of what the temple is and rebuilding of the temple is way off. It's way, 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 way off. So a lot of our people need to be retaught so that they can understand what it means when the scripture says, "Know ye not that ye are the temple of God." We need to say that to that woman in that video. "Know ye not that ye are the temple of God?" Why are you sitting over here trying to talk about you're in support of these people rebuilding a third temple? While he's sitting here talking to you, I bet you that dude knows. That's why he's laughing. He knows that she's an Israelite. He knows that she's the real temple of God. But he's not going to tell her that. In his mind, he's just sitting back laughing, going, "This dumb nigga. She has no idea." While he's trying to pretend like he doesn't know how to pronounce her name. But she's a babe. She, in the video, she says that she started reading the Bible at 4 years old and she came to love Jesus and all of that. And that's part of the problem, is that she started reading the book as a child with no oversight, and all her wisdom, knowledge, and understanding of the scriptures comes from her own understanding, not from precept upon precept, and what she learned growing up in the Baptist church, as she states that she grew up in the Baptist church. So she, like a lot of our people, need to be retaught. They need milk. They need to, a lot of our people need that bottle of milk to be busted open and, and pour it into the cup for them to drink. Because their understanding of the scriptures is way off. They have no wisdom. They have no knowledge, no understanding of the word. Why? But they're trying to understand the hard things, like the rebuilding of the temple, and getting it way wrong, to the point to where she's idolizing the wrong people. She's over here, you know what I mean, trusting and believing in these Jews that are over there in the land today, not realizing that she's a million times more a Jew than that dude she was talking to would ever be. Why is that? Because the truth has been hidden from her. So as newborn babes, our people need to desire the sincere milk of the word. They need to, so that we can stop having our people like her getting deceived and, you know what I mean, going after doctrines that have got nothing to do with her. Let's go to 1 Peter 2:2.
The book of 1 Peter chapter 2 and verse 2. As newborn babes desire the sincere milk of the word, that ye may grow thereby.
So she needs to desire the sincere milk of the word. She needs to be retaught by her own people, not by these people that have, their agenda is to keep her in the dark and to keep their agenda going, which is to make sure that we never find out that we are the temple of God, that we are the true children of Israel. We are the true chosen people, that it's us that God loves. But on the other hand, like I said, we can't fault your normal, average, everyday Joe Blow Jewish person over there. It's some of these rabbis and teachers like that guy that she was talking to that know the truth, but will never admit it. They will never, ever. Well, can't say that, because some of them are starting to come out and admit it. There are some of these Jewish rabbis that are giving half truth now, that, there are some Jewish people of color. There are some. So they're giving a half truth about it now. All right. So our people, though, need to desire the sincere milk of the word so that they can grow in wisdom. they could get the proper wisdom of the scriptures and come to the proper understanding of what it means to be the temple of God and the temple that's being rebuilt. Grab Job 38 and 36.
The book of Job, chapter 38 and verse 36. Who hath put wisdom in the inward parts, or who hath given understanding to the heart?
So who hath put wisdom in the inward parts? Who hath given understanding to the heart, meaning to your mind? The heart is the mind. Who has done that? You see, if you listen to the lady, go back and watch the video. I don't know why there's no audio. I apologize about that. But she's got no wisdom. Her wisdom came from her own studies, from reading the Bible as a child, and in which on one hand you can't fault her. She was being as a newborn babe, desiring the sincere milk of the word. It's just unfortunately she had no one there guiding her correctly, or guiding her at all, to the point to where she says it that, she got her understanding from her own reading, from her own studies. So she was leaning on her own understanding as a child in order to get wisdom. So the wisdom that she got was not put into her inward parts, not necessarily by the Most High. All right. Grab Wisdom of Solomon 7 and 15.
The book of Wisdom of Solomon, chapter 7 and verse 15. God had granted me to speak as I would, and to conceive as is meet for the things that are given me, because it is he that leadeth unto wisdom and directeth the wise.
Because it's God that leadeth unto wisdom. He's the one that directeth the wise. You have to be retaught. Someone has to guide you through the scriptures. At least give you that foundation, built upon who? Built upon Christ. Once you got that solid foundation, just like with anything else, then you could be let loose to, okay, you've got the basics down, you've got the basic wisdom, the basic knowledge and understanding. You've got the milk. You know what I mean? Now it's time for you to fly the coop and do your own studies now. But without that, person's going to be totally lost. As it says, God hath granted me to speak as I would. Same thing with us. And to conceive as is meet for the things that are given me. We're going to speak the things that are good because they're coming out of the scriptures. Because it is he that leadeth unto wisdom and directeth the wise. It's the Most High that is directing the Israelites to wisdom. His chosen people, he's the one that's waking us up. What's happening in the world today is not happening by accident. You're seeing Bible prophecy come to pass. The prophecy, you see, everybody's totally ignores the prophecy of the Israelites waking up in the last days. But they will run to this so-called prophecy about the red heifer and about the third temple being rebuilt in the Temple Mount. But you're seeing Bible prophecy come to pass, true Bible prophecy, with every Israelite that is waking up. When you look at the so-called Black, Hispanic, and Native American community, and you see our people out on the streets teaching, see them on YouTube teaching, see them, you know what I mean, in schools teaching. Grab Wisdom of Solomon 8 and 21.
The book of Wisdom of Solomon, chapter 8 and verse 21. Nevertheless, when I perceived that I could not otherwise obtain her, except God gave her me, and that was a point of wisdom also to know whose gift she was. I prayed unto the Lord and besought him, and with my whole heart I said.
So whose gift is it? Wisdom is whose gift to give? It's the Most High's gift. That's why he says, nevertheless, when I perceived that I could not otherwise obtain her except God gave her me. You cannot obtain wisdom unless it's given to you from the Most High. The wisdom, the knowledge, the understanding of what it means to be the temple of God. You're not going to get it unless it's given to you by the Most High. It's his gift to give. And not all of our people are going to receive it. Just like the lady in the video. Unfortunately, you guys didn't get a chance to hear what she said. Lord's will, you could either go to that Israel 365 channel and look it up, or you could go straight to YouTube, whichever one. But go and listen to it and listen to what she says and listen to this guy. But he says, I prayed unto the Lord and besought him, and with my whole heart I said. So he went and prayed. That's what we need to do. We need to pray for wisdom, that it would be given to us. Remember, Job 38:36 said, who hath put wisdom in the inward parts, or who hath given understanding to the heart? And it's been answered in Wisdom of Solomon 7:15, Wisdom of Solomon 8:21. It's the Lord that does it. It's the Most High that puts wisdom in the inward parts. That's the only way you're going to get it. And that's by what? By studying, by being retaught, by reading, studying, applying, praying, fasting, all of that. Let's go to Wisdom of Solomon 9:1-18.
The book of Wisdom of Solomon, chapter 9 and verse 1. O God of my fathers, and Lord of mercy, who has made all things with thy word, and ordained man through thy wisdom, that he should have dominion over the creation which thou hast made, and order the world according to equity and righteousness, and execute judgment with an upright heart. Give me wisdom, that it sitteth by the throne, and reject me not from among thy children.
So he says, give me wisdom, that sitteth by thy throne, and reject me not from among thy children. Who's this wisdom that he's talking about that sitteth by his throne? If you haven't figured it out yet, when the Bible talks about wisdom, sometimes it's talking about Christ. Go ahead and read.
For I, thy servant and son of thy handmaid, am a feeble person, and of a short time, and too young for the understanding of judgment and laws. For though a man be never so perfect among the children of men, yet if thy wisdom be not with him, he shall be nothing regarded. Thou hast chosen me to be a king of thy people, and judge of thy sons of daughters. Thou hast commanded me to build a temple upon thy holy mount, and an altar in the city wherein thou dwellest, a resemble of the holy tabernacle which thou hast prepared from the beginning. And wisdom was with thee, which knoweth thy works, and was present when thou madest the world, and knew what was acceptable in thy sight, and right in the commandments. O send her out of thy holy heavens, and from the throne of thy glory, that being present she may labor with me, that I may know what is pleasing unto thee. For she knoweth and understandeth all things, and she shall lead me sovereignly in my doings, and preserve me in her power. So shall my works be acceptable, and then shall I judge thy people righteously, and be worthy to sit in my Father's seat. For what man is that? For what man is he that can know the counsel of God, or who can think what the will of the Lord is? For the thoughts of mortal men are miserable, and our devices are but uncertain. For the corruptible body presseth down the soul, and the earthy tabernacle weigheth down the minds that mush it upon many things.
So listen to that. And the earthy tabernacle weighed down the mind that museth upon many things. Go ahead.
And hardly do we guess aright at things that are upon earth, in which labor do we find the things that are before us, but the things that are in heaven who had searched out, and the council who had known, except thou givest wisdom and send thy Holy Spirit from above. For so the way of them which live on the earth were reformed, and when men were taught the things that are pleasing unto thee, and were saved through wisdom.
And we're saved through wisdom. So our people need to study. You want to get wisdom, you need to pray for it from the Most High. You want to get wisdom and learn about some of these topics, you have got to read, you've got to study, you've got to be retaught. Otherwise, you're going to fall for the lies that are floating around. Grab Job 11 and 5 through 6.
The book of Job, chapter 11 and verse 5. But oh, that God would speak and open his lips against thee, and that he would show thee the secret of wisdom, that they are double to that which is known. Therefore, that God exacteth of thee less than thine iniquity deserveth.
So he says, but oh, that God would speak and open his lips against thee, and that he would show thee the secrets of wisdom. Some of our people are bypassing the milk because they want all the secrets. The only way you're going to get it is through what? Through the sincere milk of the word. You're going to have to accept the milk. You're going to have to get the milk first, then worry about the meat. Then you will understand. And he will show you that the seekers of wisdom, that they are double to that which is. Sometimes there is a double meaning to some of these precepts. And that's what some of these rabbis and some of these, in these Jewish synagogues, they have no clue. So they have no idea what it's talking about, as far as, you know what I mean, the temple being rebuilt, or Christ coming, the Messiah rebuilding a temple. They have no idea. Let's go to Ecclesiastes 2 and 20. Actually, hold on. We're at Job 11 and 5 through 6, right? Yeah, let's go to Ecclesiastes 2 and 26.
The book of Ecclesiastes, chapter 2 and verse 26. For God giveth to a man that is good in his sight wisdom and knowledge and joy, but to the sinner he giveth travail to gather and to heap up, that he may give to him that is good before God. This also is vanity and vexation of spirit.
So it says, for God giveth to a man that is good in his sight, wisdom and knowledge and joy. So it's the Most High that's going to give you that. Again, you want wisdom, you want knowledge, you want understanding of this book, you have got to make sure that you are in communication with the Most High, that you are doing the things that he expects of you. Grab Proverbs 4 and 7.
The book of Proverbs, chapter 4 and verse 7. Wisdom is the principal thing. Therefore, get wisdom, and with all thy getting, get understanding.
So wisdom is the principal thing. So when you're going through this book, you're going through the precepts. The main principle, the main thing that you should be seeking is wisdom. Wisdom is the principal thing. Therefore, get wisdom, and with all thy getting, get understanding. So as you get more and more wisdom, you're going to get more understanding of the scriptures. The reason why the majority of people don't understand what it means exactly to be the temple of God is because they don't study, they don't read. They don't apply what's in the scriptures. They're not going precept upon precept, line upon line, here a little and there a little. They're relying on, going by their own vain opinions, their own vain thoughts, their own vain understanding. And that's how one of our people can, be in a video like we just attempted to watch, and get bamboozled, have the okie doke, pulled on her. That, there's this third temple that's going to be built in Israel, and she's all gung ho for it. She's helped, what they say, 43 families, Russian families, make it back to the Holy Land, to the motherland. Like, instead of you being over there helping these Edomites get back to your homeland, you need to be over here helping your people, bring your people back together so that we can get put back over there. Grab Sirach 1 and 26.
The book of Ecclesiasticus, chapter 1 and verse 26. If thou desire wisdom, keep the commandments, and the Lord shall give her unto thee.
Same thing that I just said a second ago. If thou desire wisdom, keep the commandments. You need to be doing what the Most High expects of you. If you desire to get wisdom, you desire to get learning from these lessons, get learning from any, from preaching that you may hear, teaching, and you desire to learn, you have to be keeping the commandments. If thou desire wisdom, keep the commandments, and the Lord shall give her unto thee. It's just plain and simple. You've got to be applying the commandments. You've got to be keeping the laws. You see, that's why, like in her situation, she's not keeping no commandments. She says, you see, grab Matthew 15 and 7.
The book of Matthew, chapter 15 and verse 7. Ye hypocrites, well did Isaiah prophesy of you, saying, this people draweth nigh unto me with their mouth, and honoreth me with their lips, but their heart is far from me. But in vain they do worship me, teaching for doctrine the commandments of men.
And she doesn't realize that that's what's going on with her. She keeps professing her love for the Messiah and the love for his people, and, and all of that, while at the same time she has a hatred for herself and for her own people, trying to look like her oppressors. Blonde in her hair, you know what I mean? Her mannerism, her actions, the way, the way she's acting when she's talking to him. You got to watch the video to see it. You would just think that it's some of them call it a chocolate covered Edomite that's talking. But she doesn't understand that, we are the temple of God. She's more a Jew, like I said, than the guy that she was talking to. And you can see it. She was looking like she was just ecstatic to be, talking to this guy. So if you want wisdom, you don't want to get bamboozled with some of these lies that are floating around out there, especially coming from, from over there, from Israel, from the Israelis, from the, these Jewish people that are filling the world up with lies. They may call it anti-Semitic, but we can prove that the things that they're teaching, the things that they're saying are the commandments of men, that they are not from Christ. They are not teaching the truth of the Bible. They're the main ones that are instrumental in keeping us in the dark about who we are, that we are the true children of Israel, that we are the true temple of God. Let's grab Ecclesiastes chapter 3 and verse 1 through 5.
The book of Ecclesiastes, chapter 3 and verse 1. To everything there is a season and a time to every purpose under the heaven, a time to be born and a time to die, a time to plant and a time to pluck up that which was planted, a time to kill and a time to heal, a time to break down and a time to build up.
So
A time,
there's a time to break down and there's a time to build up. There's a time when the Most High needs to put a whooping on Israel and he will break down the walls. He'll break them down. And then it'll become a time when Israel will repent and the walls will get built back up. We're going to read about that in the history. It happened over and over again. It happened on several occasions. But this time, the walls that were broken down was a spiritual wall, and the wall that needs to be built up is a spiritual wall that needs to be built back up. We won't get the physical one back until Christ comes back and put us back in the land. Go ahead and read.
a time to weep and a time to laugh, a time to mourn and a time to dance, a time to cast away stones and a time to gather stones together, a time to embrace and a time to refrain from embracing.
So there's a time to cast away stones and a time to gather stones together. You see, people don't understand what this really means. It's twofold. We are the stones. We are those living stones. As we go through the lesson, we're going to get to it. But you so-called Blacks, Hispanics, and Native Americans, you are those living stones that were cast away. And there's a time where your Messiah is going to come back and he's going to gather those stones back together. See, it's a spiritual thing. And you'll understand it more when we get towards the end of the lesson. It's not just talking about physically throwing and casting stones away and gathering stones together. You got to have understanding. You got to have wisdom. You got to have knowledge to understand what this is talking about. Where are you going to get that wisdom and knowledge and understanding from? From the precepts, because there are precepts that gives you the understanding of what this is talking about. Read on. Or did you finish? A time to embrace and a time to refrain from embracing. So keep this in mind. Verse 5, a time to cast away stones and a time to gather stones together. Keep that in mind as we go through the lesson of what it's talking about. It's not just talking about physical stones. It's talking about spiritual stones. It's talking about a people, a particular people. It's talking about his people that were cast away and they need to be gathered together again. What is that? That's Zephaniah 2 and 1.
You want me to get it?
Yeah.
The book of Zephaniah, chapter 2 and verse 1. Gather yourselves together. Yeah, gather together, O nation not desired.
O nation not desired. Gather yourselves together. Yea, gather yourselves together, O nation not desired. No, I'm about to mess it up. But those are the stones that need to be gathered. The nation of Israel, you so-called Blacks, Hispanics, and Native Americans. There's a time where you got to be cast away. The Most High understands that. We go off, we start breaking his commandments, we get rebellious. We're a very sinful nation. And sometimes he got to give us the boot. He cast his stones away. Like, you know what? I'm done with you guys for now. Get away from me. Go to your room. You're on punishment. We're on punishment right now. But what you're seeing is the gathering of those stones back together. The time is now. The time is here for those stones to be regathered. If you got ears to hear. Let's go to Jeremiah 1 and 10.
The book of Jeremiah, chapter 1 and verse 10. See, I have this day set hold on. See, I have this day set thee over the nations and over the kingdoms to root out and to pull down and to destroy and to throw down, to build and to plant.
So he was telling Jeremiah, see, I have this day set thee over the nations. And remember, we just read in Ecclesiastes chapter 3 and verse 1 and 2, to everything there is a season and a time to every purpose under the heaven, a time to be born and a time to die, a time to plant and a time to pluck up that which is planted. So there's going to be a time where we're going to have to root out. We're going to have to pull down strongholds. We're going to have to root out the lies that have been told about our kingdom, about our people, about our God and our Messiah. We're going to have to root out and pull down these lies, these false doctrines, and to destroy and to throw down, to build and to plant. The time is now for us to destroy these false narratives so our people can learn the truth. It's time for us to throw down these lies that are being taught to our people about who we are, where we come from, who our God is, who our nation is, our nationality. We've got to root it out. And once we do, then it's time for us to build. It's time for us to plant. It's time for us to build up our people. It's time to plant that seed of knowledge, wisdom, and understanding into our people, which is what? This law. We have to sow this law into the minds of our people so that we could come back to our God. Again, if you've got ears to hear, let's go to Acts 7 and 49.
The book of Acts, chapter 7 and verse 49. And it says, heaven is my throne, and earth is my footstool. What house will ye build me, saith the Lord, or what is the place of my rest?
So he's asking, what house will ye build me? What house will ye build me, saith the Lord, or what is the place of my rest? What is it? That's a good question, right? That's the question that should be asked when you hear of them over there talking about building this third temple. That's where you got to go to Acts 7 and 49. I'm like, wait a minute. The Most High is asking, what house will you build me? Especially these Edomites. What house are you going to build the Lord? Because you're certainly not building up his people. You're trying to hide them. So are they really trying to follow the book, or are they just pretending to follow the book? What house will you build me, saith the Lord, or what is the place of my rest? And we're going to go through the history. We're going to first hit on the tabernacle, because there were houses built for the Lord. He did instruct Moses to build him a house, because he had said that from the time he had brought Israel out of the house of Egypt, or out of Egypt, out of the house of bondage, that he had no place to rest his feet, no place to rest his head, no place to, to be. So he gave Moses the instructions. He gave him the blueprint for the tabernacle, the earthly tabernacle, which was mirrored after the tabernacle in heaven. So we're going to go through that history. There's going to be a lot of reading. So what we'll do is we'll go back and forth. We'll trade off on chapters. So we're going to start off with Exodus 25 and 1 through 9. Because there's going to be a lot of reading. So bear with us. There's going to be a lot of reading. Implore you to get your pen out, your pads, take notes, get your Bible out, and read along with us. So before he even begins reading, just to give you a little bit of history, Moses received the instructions to build the tabernacle. This was back in 1250 BC. So make sure when we give you these dates, write these dates down. So when Moses was given the instructions to build the tabernacle, that was back at around 1250 BC. All right. So when you're ready to read, go ahead and read that.
The book of Exodus, chapter 25, and verse 1. And the Lord spake unto Moses, saying, Speak unto the children of Israel, that they bring me an offering of every man that giveth willingly with his heart. Ye shall take my offering. And this is the offering which ye shall take of them: gold and silver and brass, and blue and purple and scarlet, and fine linen and goat's hair, and ram skin dyed red, and badger skin and shittim wood, oil for the light, spices for anointing oil, and for sweet incense, onyx stone and stones to be set in the ephod and in the breastplate. And let them make me a sanctuary, that I may dwell among them, according to all that I showed thee, after the pattern of the tabernacle, and the pattern of all the instruments thereof, even so shall ye make it.
So he said in verse 8, and let them make me a sanctuary that I may dwell among them. So what he was giving Moses here was instructions. He was telling him what kind of materials they needed: gold and silver and brass, even fine linens of blue and purple and scarlet made of goat's hair, ram skins, and so on, shittim wood, oil, spices, incense. So he was giving him the instructions that he needed to build this sanctuary, to build this tabernacle. Why was this tabernacle being erected or being built? It was answered in verse 8 when he says, and let them make me a sanctuary that I may dwell among them. That was the purpose. All right. So we're going to continue on. I'll read Exodus 26. We're going to read the entire chapter 1 through 37. So now in Exodus 26, what we're going to read is the instructions that he gave for the tabernacle, for the building of it. All right. He gave them detailed instructions on how to build the tabernacle. So this is Exodus 26 and 1. So the book of Exodus, chapter 26 and verse 1, it says, moreover, thou shalt make the tabernacle with 10 curtains of fine twined linen, and blue and purple and scarlet. With cherubims of cunning work shalt thou make them. The length of one curtain shall be 28 cubits, and the breadth of one curtain 4 cubits. And every one of the curtains shall have one measure. The 5 curtains shall be coupled together one to another, and other 5 curtains shall be coupled one to another. And thou shalt make loops of blue upon the edge of the one curtain from the selvage in the coupling. And likewise shalt thou make in the uttermost edge of another curtain, in the coupling of the second. Verse 5, 50 loops shalt thou make in the one curtain, and 50 loops shalt thou make in the edge of the curtain that is in the coupling of the second, that the loops may take hold one of another. And thou shalt make 50 tacks of gold, and couple the curtains together with the tacks, and it shall be one tabernacle. Verse 7, and thou shalt make curtains of goat's hair to be a covering upon the tabernacle. 11 curtains shalt thou make. The length of one curtain shall be 30 cubits, and the breadth of one curtain 4 cubits, and the 11 curtains shall be all of one measure. And thou shalt couple 5 curtains by themselves, and 6 curtains by themselves, and shalt double the 6th curtain in the forefront of the tabernacle. And thou shalt make 50 loops on the edge of the one curtain that is outmost in the coupling, and 50 loops in the edge of the curtain which coupleth the second. And thou shalt make 50 tacks of brass, and put the tacks into the loops, and couple the tent together, that it may be one. And the remnant that remaineth of the curtains of the tent, the half curtain that remaineth, shall hang over the backside of the tabernacle. and a cubit on the one side, and a cubit on the other side of that which remaineth in the length of the curtains of the tent. It shall hang over the sides of the tabernacle on this side and on that side to cover it. And thou shalt make a covering for the tent of ram skins dyed red, and a covering above the badger skins. Verse 15. And thou shalt make boards for the tabernacle of shittim wood, standing up. 10 cubits shall be the length of a board, and a cubit and a half shall be the breadth of one board. 2 tenons shall there be in one board, set in order one against another. Thus shalt thou make for all the boards of the tabernacle. And thou shalt make the boards for the tabernacle, 20 boards on the south side southward. And thou shalt make 40 sockets of silver under the 20 boards, 2 sockets under one board for his 2 tenons, and 2 sockets under another board for his 2 tenons. Verse 20. And for the second side of the tabernacle on the north side, there shall be 20 boards. And there's 40 sockets of silver, 2 sockets under one board and 2 sockets under another board. And for the sides of the tabernacle westward, thou shalt make 6 boards, and 2 boards shalt thou make for the corners of the tabernacle in the 2 sides. And they shall be coupled together beneath, and they shall be coupled together above the head of it unto one ring. Thus shall it be for them both. They shall be for the 2 corners. And they shall be 8 boards in their sockets of silver, 16 sockets, 2 sockets under one board, and 2 sockets under another board. And thou shalt make bars of shittim wood, 5 for the boards of the one side of the tabernacle, and 5 bars for the boards of the other side of the tabernacle, and 5 bars for the boards of the side of the tabernacle for the 2 sides westward. And the middle bar in the midst of the board shall reach from end to end. And thou shalt overlay the boards with gold, and make the rings of gold for places for the bars, and thou shalt overlay the bars with gold. Verse 30. And thou shalt rear up the tabernacle according to the fashion thereof, which was showed thee in the mount. And thou shalt make a veil of blue and purple and scarlet and fine twined linen of cunning work. With cherubim shall it be made. So remember verse 31 where it's talking about the veil, because we're going to explain the veil in a second, in a little bit. And thou shalt hang it upon 4 pillars of shittim wood overlaid with gold. Their hooks shall be of gold, and upon the 4 sockets of silver. And thou shalt hang up the veil under the tacks, that thou mayest bring in thither within the veil the ark of the testimony. And the veil shall divide unto you between the holy place and the most holy. So he's giving instructions about this veil that was to be made. Part of the reason for the veil to be constructed was for the Ark of the Covenant to be kept in. That was one of the part of the reason for it, one of the reasons for it. Verse 33 again, and thou shalt hang up the veil under the tacks, that thou mayest bring in thither within the veil the ark of the testimony. And the veil shall divide unto you between the holy place and the most holy. The other purpose behind it was that it would be a divider between the holy place and the most holy place, as you read about. Verse 34, and thou shalt put the mercy seat upon the ark of the testimony in the most holy place. And thou shalt set the table without the veil, and the candlestick over against the table on the side of the tabernacle toward the south. And thou shalt put the table on the north side. And thou shalt make it hanging for the door of the tent of blue and purple and scarlet and fine twined linen, wrought with needlework. And thou shalt make for the hanging 5 pillars of shittim wood, and overlay them with gold, and their hooks shall be of gold. And thou shalt cast 5 sockets of brass for them. Okay, so you can see he's giving him instructions on erecting this tabernacle, giving him instructions on, what some of these different rooms are going to be used for, giving him instructions about the tools and things like that that's going to be used. Let's go to Exodus 27:1. I'll have you read this chapter. It's 1 through 21. So now what he's going to do is give him instructions about the bronze altar, the court for the tabernacle, and the oil for the lamp. So that's what he's going to get into next. Go ahead.
The book of Exodus, chapter 27 and verse 1. And thou shalt make an altar of shittim wood, 5 cubits long and 5 cubits broad. The altar shall be 4 square, and the height thereof shall be 3 cubits. And thou shalt make the horns of it upon the four corners thereof. His horns shall be of the same, and thou shalt overlay it with brass. And thou shalt make his pans to receive his ashes, and his shovels, and his basins, and his flesh hooks, and his fire pans, and the vessels thereof thou shalt make of brass. And thou shalt make for it a grate of network of brass, and upon the net shalt thou make four brazen rings in the four corners of thereof. And thou shalt put it under the compass of the altar beneath that the net may be even to the midst of the altar. And thou shalt make staves for the altar, staves of shittim wood, overlay them with brass. And the staff shall be put into a rings, and the stave shall be upon the two sides of the altar to bear it. Hollow with boards shalt thou make it, as it was showed thee in the mount, so shall they make it. And thou shalt make the court of the tabernacle for south side southward. There shall be hanging from the court a fine twine line of 100 cubits long of one side, and the 20 pillars thereof and their 20 sockets shall be of brass. The hooks of the pillar and their filters shall be of silver. And
Yeah,
likewise, uh, filleries,
fillets,
fillets shall be,
like fillet of fish.
there you go. Their fillets shall be of silver. And likewise, for the north side in length, there shall be hanging of 100 cubics long, and his 20 pillars and their 20 sockets of brass, the hooks of the pillars and their fillets of silver. And for the breadth of the court of the west side shall be hanging of 50 cubits. Their pillars 10, and their sockets 10. And the breadth of the court of the east side eastward shall be 50 cubits. The hanging of one side of the gate shall be 15 cubits, their pillars 3, and their sockets 3. And on the other side shall be hanging 15 cubits, their pillars 3, and their sockets 3. And for the gates of the court shall be an hanging of 20 cubits of blue, and purple, and scarlet, and fine twined linen, wrought with needled work, and their pillars shall be 4, and their sockets 4. All the pillars round about the court shall be filled with the silver. Their hooks shall be of silver, and their sockets of brass. The length of the court shall be 100 cubits, and 3 breadth 50 everywhere, and the height 5 cubits of fine twined linen, and their sockets of brass. All the vessels of the tabernacle, and all the service thereof, and all the pins thereof, and all the pins of the court shall be of brass. And thou shalt command the children of Israel that they bring thee pure olive beaten for the light to cause the lamp to burn always. In the tabernacle of the congregation without the veils, which is before the testimony, Aaron and his sons shall order it from evening to morning before the Lord. It shall be a statute forever unto their generations on the behalf of the children of Israel.
So it says in verse 20 again, and thou shalt command the children of Israel that they bring thee pure oil olive beaten for the light to cause the lamp to burn always. The lamp that is talking about is the 7 lamp menorah, the 7 candlestick menorah. As we're going to read, there's going to go in detail about, the making of the menorah, the tables and everything. But it says in verse 21, the tabernacle of the congregation without the veil, meaning outside the veil, which is before the testimony, Aaron and his son shall order it from evening to morning before the Lord, meaning they should have this lamp burning from morning to evening. This lamp should be burning at all times. It shall be a statute forever unto their generations on the behalf of the children of Israel. And obviously we were not able to do that because throughout our history, we had our temples burnt down or the land invaded by other nations because of our disobedience. All right, so now we're going to go to Exodus 28 and 1. I'll read Exodus 28. I'm going to read through verse 11. So what's happening here in Exodus 28 as they actually get to building the temple. So what we're reading about in Exodus 26 and 27 were the instructions the Most High gave to Moses. So now the Most High is going to instruct Moses that Bezalel and Aholiab were that they're going to be filled with wisdom and that they would do the work. So it's going to be Bezalel and Aholiab that are going to be in charge of doing the work to build the tabernacle. All right. So going to Exodus chapter 28 and verse 1. So this is going to be going into the priest garments. Says, and take thou unto thee Aaron thy brother and his sons with him from among the children of Israel, that he may minister unto me in the priest's office, even Aaron, Nadab, and Abihu, Eleazar, and Ithamar, Aaron's sons. And thou shalt make holy garments for Aaron thy brother for glory and for beauty. And thou shalt speak unto all that are wise. And that goes back again, you know, because some of these people see our people in the streets wearing these garments, and they want to try and make fun and say, oh, they look like, Power Rangers and all this kind of stuff. Hold on for 1 second. I'm going to share my screen real quick. Can you see it? All right. So when people see our people wearing what is, our traditional garments, and you have to remember that the Chinese are, they're Shemitic also. So you will see that a lot of the traditional garments that some of these people made or wore back then are really not that much different than the garments that we wore. Like this one, for instance, this is a traditional Chinese garment. You see, he's got the girdle, there isn't that much of a difference because our what do you call it? I want to say heritage, customs, as far as, things like that weren't that much different. Like when you, okay, so that's Chinese. Okay, let's see what else they got here. Something one of the women would wear. All right, so you see, you don't see anybody ever making fun of them for wearing their traditional garment. So that's the knees. Let's go to Hmong traditional clothing. So you can see this is some of the Hmong traditional clothing. In Stockton, they have it's Stockton's a big melting pot. Got everybody there. We got the Hmongs, we got the Vietnamese, we got the Mien, we got the Cambodian, you got Chinese, Filipino, East Indian. You got all the Arabs are there. Of course, our people eat them. It is just a big mix, and every year they have all of these different festivals for all of these different nationalities. And you will see them come out and, they'll perform and things like that in their traditional clothing. Even some of their weddings, you may run across them having one of their traditional weddings where they will wear their traditional clothing. But you never hear anybody making fun of them, right? Calling them, they look like Power Rangers, they look like this, they look like that. So, Hmong traditional clothing. Let's try another. Let's go to and I know Ezra probably knows what I'm talking about from Stock. They have these festivals every year in Stockton. It's almost like everybody gets a festival. Cambodian traditional clothing. Go to images. And I don't know why it's like always mostly the women that they show. But you can see in a lot of their traditional clothing, a lot of the idolatry and stuff that's involved in it. I only saw one dude. Maybe I have to type in men. Well, there's a couple of guys. So you can see, their traditional clothing. Does anybody ever say that they look like Power Rangers? Anybody say he looking like an elf? You know what I mean? Making fun of them. You don't see that. And you don't hear it. Let me see. Filipino traditional clothing. So you can see the styles are not that different when you look at them. It's not that much of a difference. All right. You could even go African traditional clothing. Because some of our people, these are more modernized traditional clothing for some of them. But let me go to images. Here we go. That's something like this. Do you ever see them or hear of them being mocked because of this is a traditional wedding outfit for, what they would consider African. Do they ever get mocked, laughed, made fun of? But people seem to have a problem with now let's type in Israelite traditional clothing. And of course, they're going to try and throw it in as Jewish. So let's go to images. So why is it that all the other nations can glory in their traditional, clothing and things like that? But for our people, we get mocked. I'll click on some of them. So do you see much of a difference between our traditional clothing and theirs? There isn't much. I particularly like ours better. And I don't know who, these people are, what camps they may be with. You can see the difference with us. We got the fringes and border of blue. Fringes and border of blue. So why is it that the other nations can come together dress up in their traditional, clothing, and and look, I don't know what the word is. What word could you use? I'm trying to think of a word, but whatever word you could think of, but our people can. This is, no, that's too tight. That's too revealing. I was gonna say that might look like a nice Israelite dress right there, but that's too. But here you go. So why is it we're called Power Rangers? Let me see. All right, so this would be an example of what we're going to read about right here about the garments that were to be made for Aaron and his sons, the Israelite, priestly garments. All right, so let me stop sharing. So going back to Exodus 28 and 1 again, it says, "And take thou unto thee Aaron thy brother and his sons with him from among the children of Israel, that he may minister unto me in the priest's office, even Aaron, Nadab, and Abihu, Eleazar, and Ithamar, Aaron's sons. And thou shalt make holy garments for Aaron thy brother for glory and for beauty. And thou shalt speak unto all that are wise hearted, whom I have filled with the spirit of wisdom, that they may make Aaron's garments to consecrate him, that he may minister unto me in the priest's office. And these are the garments which they shall make: a breastplate, and an ephod, and a robe, and a broidered coat, a mitre, and a girdle. And they shall make holy garments for Aaron thy brother and his sons, that he may minister unto me in the priest's office. And they shall take gold, and blue, and purple, and scarlet, and fine linen. And they shall make the ephod of gold, and of blue, and of purple, of scarlet, and fine twined linen with cunning work." So that example that we just looked at is an example of what was made. Verse 7, "It shall have the two shoulder pieces thereof joined at the two edges thereof, and so it shall be joined together. And the curious girdle of the ephod which is upon it shall be of the same, according to the work thereof, even of gold, of blue, and purple, and scarlet, and fine twined linen. And thou shalt take 2 onyx stones, and grave on them the names of the children of Israel, 6 of their names on one stone, and the other 6 names of the rest on the other stone, according to their birth. With the work of an engraver in stone, like the engravings of a signet, shalt thou engrave the 2 stones with the names of the children of Israel. Thou shalt make them to be set in ouches of gold. And thou shalt put the 2 stones upon the shoulders of the ephod for stones of memorial unto the children of Israel. And Aaron shall bear their names before the Lord upon his 2 shoulders for a memorial. And thou shalt make ouches of gold, and 2 chains of pure gold at the ends. Of wreathen work shalt thou make them, and fasten the wreathen chains to the ouches. And thou shalt make the breastplate of judgment with cunning work. After the work of the ephod, thou shalt make it of gold, of blue, and of purple, and of scarlet, and of fine twined linen shalt thou make it. 4 square it shall be, being doubled. A span shall be the length thereof, and a span shall be the breadth thereof. And thou shalt set in its settings of stones, even 4 rows of stones. The first row shall be a sardius, a topaz, and a carbuncle. This shall be the first row. And remember what we were just looking at, that gold breastplate that had around it with the what do you call it? The stones that were in it. That's what is describing right now. Verse 18, "And the second row shall be an emerald, a sapphire, and a diamond." Verse 19, "And the third row, a liquor, and a agate, and an amethyst." Verse 20, "And the fourth row, a beryl, and an onyx, and a jasper. They shall be set in gold in their enclosings. And the stones shall be with the names of the children of Israel, 12 according to their names, like the engravings of a signet. Every one with his name shall they be, according to the 12 tribes." So we just saw that when you're looking at that garment, that we just showed, the last picture, had the gold plate with the 12 stones in it. Verse 22, and thou shalt make upon the breastplate chains at the ends of wreathen work of pure gold. And thou shalt make upon the breastplate 2 rings of gold, and shalt put the 2 rings on the 2 ends of the breastplate. And thou shalt put the 2 wreathen chains of gold in the 2 rings which are on the ends of the breastplate. And the other 2 ends of the 2 wreathen chains thou shalt fasten in the 2 ouches, and put them in the shoulder pieces of the ephod before it. And thou shalt make 2 rings of gold, and thou shalt put them upon the 2 ends of the breastplate in the order thereof, which is in the side of the ephod inward. And 2 other rings of gold thou shalt make, and shalt put them on the 2 sides of the ephod underneath, toward the forepart thereof, over against the other coupling thereof, above the curious girdle of the ephod. And they shall bind the breastplate by the rings thereof unto the rings of the ephod with a lace of blue, that it may be above the curious girdle of the ephod, and that the breastplate be not loose from the ephod. And Aaron shall bear the names of the children of Israel in the breastplate of judgment upon his heart, when he goeth in unto the holy place for a memorial before the Lord continually. Verse 30. And thou shalt put in the breastplate of judgment the Urim and the Thummim, and they shall be upon Aaron's heart when he goeth in before the Lord. And Aaron shall bear the judgment of the children of Israel upon his heart before the Lord continually. And thou shalt make the robe of the ephod olive blue, and there shall be an hole in the top of it. In the midst thereof it shall have a binding of woven work round about the whole of it, as it were the whole of a habergeon, that it be not rent. Verse all right, I'll continue. I think I was supposed to only just read to verse 11. I kept on going, didn't I?
Right.
That's all right. I'll just keep reading it. Verse that just hit me right now. All right, verse 33, and beneath upon the hem of it thou shalt make pomegranates of blue and of purple and of scarlet round about the hem thereof, and bells of gold between them round about. A golden bell and a pomegranate, a golden bell and a pomegranate upon the hem of the robe round about. And it shall be upon Aaron to minister, and his sound shall be heard when he goeth in unto the holy place before the Lord, and when he cometh out, that he die not. And thou shalt make a plate of pure gold, and grave upon it like the engravings of a signet, holiness to the Lord. And thou shalt put it on a blue lace, that it may be upon the mitre, upon the forefront of the mitre it shall be. And it shall be upon Aaron's forehead, that Aaron may bear the iniquity of the holy things which the children of Israel shall hallow, and all their holy gifts. And it shall be always upon his forehead, that they may be accepted before the Lord. And thou shalt embroider the coat of fine linen, and thou shalt make the mitre of fine linen, and thou shalt make the girdle of needlework. And for Aaron's sons thou shalt make coats, and thou shalt make for them girdles, and bonnets shalt thou make for them, for glory and for beauty. And thou shalt put them upon Aaron thy brother and his sons with them, and shalt anoint them, and consecrate them, and sanctify them, that they may minister unto me in the priest's office. And thou shalt make them linen breeches, to cover their nakedness, from the loins even unto the thighs they shall reach. So these linen breeches that it's talking about is talking about pants. Breeches were made for men. There is nowhere in the scriptures where you read that breeches were made for women. So when you go to and read about women not wearing pants, I don't know why there's such an argument about whether or not women should be wearing pants or not, when the scriptures are clear right here in verse 42. And thou shalt make them linen breeches to cover their nakedness, from the loins even unto the thighs they shall reach. And they shall be upon Aaron and upon his sons when they come in unto the tabernacle of the congregation, or when they come near unto the altar to minister in the holy place, that they bear not iniquity and die. It shall be a statute forever unto him and his seed after him. So I don't understand the argument about women not wearing pants. You know what I mean? I don't know. I don't get it. So we're going to go to Exodus 33. You're going to read verses 7 through 11. What's happening here is that Moses is going to put the tabernacle just outside the camp. And what they call it, it's called the tabernacle of the congregation. The tabernacle of the congregation, because who was the congregation that was there dwelling among the Most High using the tabernacle? It was the children of Israel. It was our ancestors. All right, so go ahead and read when you got it.
The book of Exodus, chapter 33 and verse 7. And Moses took the tabernacle and pitched it without the camp, afar off from the camp, and called it the tabernacle of the congregation. And it came to pass that everyone which sought the Lord's went out unto the tabernacle of the congregation, which was out of the camp.
So if you wanted to pray to the Most High, you want to call upon the Most High, you know what I mean? You wanted to, have any kind of communication with the Most High, or you know what I mean? That's what the tabernacle was erected for. That's why it says, and it came to pass that everyone which sought the Lord went out unto the tabernacle of the congregation, which was without the camp. So that's what it was for. Go ahead.
And it came to pass, when Moses went out unto the tabernacle, that all the people rose up and stood every man at his tent door, and looked after Moses until he was gone into the tabernacle. And it came to pass, as Moses entered into the tabernacle, the cloudy pillar descended and stood at the door of the tabernacle, and the Lord talked with Moses.
So every time Moses would go into the tabernacle, this cloud would come down to the entrance of the door, and the Lord would come down. He would hang out and talk with Moses. The people saw it with their own eyes. Go ahead.
And all the people saw the cloudy pillars stand at the tabernacle.
Go ahead.
Which one did I miss?
Verse. No, I said no. Like I was just saying, I just said it when I was speaking, but forgot that it was going to come up in the next verse. That the people saw it with their own eyes. That the cloud came in front of the tabernacle, and you know what I mean. Our people actually saw this. Go ahead, though.
And all the people, verse 10. And all the people saw the cloudy pillar stand at the tabernacle door, and all the people rose up and worshipped every man in his tent door. And the Lord spake unto Moses face to face, as a man speaketh unto his friend. And he turned again into the camp, but his servant Joshua, the son of Nun, a young man, departed not out of the tabernacle.
All right. So we can see that the tabernacle was erected. It was called the tabernacle of the congregation. The Lord came down and talked to Moses face to face. So now the question you got to ask is, was that the Father or was that Christ? Good question, right? Let's go to Exodus 35 and verse 4. So I'll read this one. So now what we're going to read about in Exodus 35 are the people actually giving their contributions for the tabernacle, for the building of the tabernacle. So it's not written in order. You got to remember that a lot of the stuff that is written in the Bible is not written in chronological order. That's why we're going from Exodus 33, where it's talking about the tabernacle was completed and the pillar of cloud would come down and dwell, at the door of the tabernacle, and the people would go to the tabernacle to worship. You know what I mean? When the cloud would come down to the tabernacle, the people stayed in their tents and they worshiped from their tents. But now we're going to Exodus 35, 2 chapters later, and now it's getting into the actual people giving their contributions to build the tabernacle. So you got to remember, sometimes it's all over the place. That's why you got to read, so you could put it in order and put it into context. Because if you try and read the Bible from cover to cover, you're going to be lost because it's not written in a chronological order. And that's what some people think. You hear people say, oh, I'm going to read the whole Bible. And it's go, all right, then knock yourself out. I've done it twice and it's confusing. That's why you got to read, chapters, read, precept upon precept, line upon line, here a little and there a little. And then you'll get understanding of it. Going from cover to cover, you're lost. All right. So Exodus 35 and verse 4. And let me switch that. And I'll go ahead and read it. It says, and Moses spake unto all the congregation of the children of Israel, saying, this is the thing which the Lord commanded, saying, take ye from among you an offering unto the Lord. Whosoever is of a willing heart, let him bring it, an offering of the Lord, gold and silver and brass. So he's saying, hey, you know what? Be willing, be willing to give. And that's how it always is supposed to be. Be of a willing heart to give, not because somebody's forcing you to give. Verse 6, it says, in blue and purple and scarlet and fine linen and goat's hair, and ram skins dyed red and badger skins and shittim wood, and oil for the light, and spices for anointing oil and for the sweet incense, and onyx stones and stones to be set for the ephod and for the breastplate. Verse 10, and every wise hearted among you shall come and make all that the Lord hath commanded. The tabernacle, his tent and his covering, his tacks and his boards, his bars, his pillars and his sockets, the ark and the staves thereof, with the mercy seat and the veil of the covering, the table and his staves and all his vessels and the showbread, the candlestick also for the light and his furniture and his lamps with the oil for the light. Verse 15, and the incense altar and his staves and the anointing oil and the sweet incense and the hanging for the door at the entering in of the tabernacle, the altar of burnt offering with his brazen grate, his staves and all his vessels, the laver and his foot, the hangings of the court, his pillars and their sockets, and the hanging for the door of the court, the pins of the tabernacle and the pins of the court and their cords, the clothes of service to do service in the holy place, the holy garments for Aaron the priest, and the garments of his sons to minister in the priest's office. Verse 20, and all the congregation of the children of Israel departed from the presence of Moses. So they, departed. He gave them the instructions, go, grab the stuff that we need. And that's what they did. After he gave the instructions, they departed and they went to go get whatever they had so that they can give, so that the tabernacle could be built. Verse 21, and they came, every one whose heart stirred him up, and every one whom his spirit made willing. And they brought the Lord's offering to the work of the tabernacle of the congregation, and for all his service, and for the holy garments. So you notice that it says, everyone whose heart stirred him up, and everyone whom his spirit made willing, and they brought the Lord's offering to the work of the tabernacle of the congregation. Because actually last week did watch a particular group where their leader was basically telling the people, you better give alms. If you ain't gonna give no alms, we'll kick you out of here. It was like, what? It was like, really? It's that serious now? That if you don't give alms, you ain't wanting to give, the Lord can't deal with, the Lord can't work with you. The Lord don't need you. I don't want to digress from what's going on, but just remembering that I was kind of shocked, like, really? But that's what it's coming to now. No different than the Christian church, that you better be giving. Now read that again, verse 22. And they came, both men and women, as many as were willing hearted, and brought bracelets and earrings and rings and tablets, all jewels of gold. And every man that offered an offering of gold unto the Lord. And every man with whom was found blue and purple and scarlet and fine linen and goat's hair and red skins of rams and badger skins brought them. Everyone that did offer an offering of silver and brass brought the Lord's offering, and every man with whom was found shittim wood for any work of the service brought it. And all the women that were wise hearted did spin with their hands and brought that which they had spun, both of blue and of purple and of scarlet and of fine linen. And you notice the women are working, right along with the men. They're doing their part. What would be called sewing machines today, but they were spinning that wheel and getting that, all that linen and everything sewed together. Verse 26, and all the women whose hearts stirred them up in wisdom spun goat's hair. And the rulers brought onyx stones and stones to be set for the ephod and for the breastplate, and spice and oil for the light, and for the anointing oil, and for the sweet incense. The children of Israel brought a willing offering unto the Lord, every man and woman whose heart made them willing to bring for all manner of work, which the Lord had commanded to be made by the hand of Moses. Now, they're going to get into the construction of the tabernacle. Verse 30, and Moses said unto the children of Israel, see, the Lord hath called by name Bezaleel, the son of Uri, the son of Hur, of the tribe of Judah. And he hath filled him with the Spirit of God, in wisdom and understanding, and in knowledge, and in all manner of workmanship, and to devise curious works, to work in gold, and in silver, and in brass, and in the cutting of stones, to set them, and in carving of wood, to make any manner of cunning work. And he hath put in his heart that he may teach, both he and Aholiab, the son of Ahisamach, of the tribe of Dan. Them hath he filled with wisdom of heart to work all manner of work, and the engraver, and of the cunning workman, and of the embroiderer, in blue, and in purple, in scarlet, and in fine linen, and of the weaver, and of them that do any work, and of those that devise cunning work. So you can look at our people today, and you can see that a lot of these attributes that our people got, we got them from the Most High. He gave our people the wisdom and knowledge to do this stuff. We have a lot of our people, especially of the Northern Kingdom, that are great at construction. Like, why do you think Esau is hiring so many of them to work construction? You go by a construction site and you see a lot of Northern Kingdom. Even, a lot of our people, are great artists. That you see a lot of them working, and what is it called? In graphic design and things like that today. See a lot of them that, they, in the auto industry, working on cars, all manner of work. A lot of our women are blessed with the knowledge of knowing how to sew and use sewing machines, and and make beautiful garments and things like that. Why do you think we're just looking at those pictures of traditional clothing? You weren't seeing that many different traditional Israelite clothes being made, but that spirit is within our women, that now you're seeing a lot of the men and our women that are wearing all kinds of beautiful garments, because that spirit was put upon our people by the Most High. It's just we had forgotten because we were in captivity. Now that remembrance is being brought. Remember, he had said he was going to give us another comforter, and that comforter was going to bring all things to our remembrance. And that's what's happening as we read the scriptures. That's why it's important to read. How would we have known what the garments look like, the traditional clothing our forefathers wore, if we didn't read the scriptures? It's written in here. How would we know what kind of food, that we ate, what kind of high holy days God gave us, if he didn't leave this for us? All right. So let's go to chapter 36. I'll have you read chapter 36, verses 1 through 38. Now, this is talking about the actual construction of the tabernacle. And again, like I said, this is boring. A lot of people don't want, they don't want to sit through and listen to a bunch of reading and things like that. But how are you going to get understanding if you don't? But go ahead when you're ready.
The book of Exodus, chapter 36 and verse 1. Then brought Bezaleel and Aholiab and every wise heart man in whom the Lord put wisdom and understanding to know how to work all manner of work for the service of the sanctuary, according to all that the Lord had commanded. And Moses called Bezaleel and Aholiab and every wise-hearted man in whose heart the Lord had put wisdom, even every one whose heart stirred him up to come unto the work to do it. And they received Moses all the offering which the children of Israel had brought for the work of the service of the sanctuary, to make it withal. And they brought yet unto him free offerings every morning. And all the wise men that wrought all the work of the sanctuary came every man from his work which they made. And they spake unto Moses, saying, the people bring much more than enough for the service of the work which the Lord commanded to make. And Moses gave commandment, and they caused it to be proclaimed throughout the camp, saying, let neither man nor woman make any more work for the offering of the sanctuary. So the people were restrained from bringing.
You see what happened when there was too much that was given? They had integrity. Like, whoa, 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 we got to stop. You guys brought too much. Well, you don't bring any more. Don't bring any more offering. But do you think that happens today in the Christian churches and in some of these Israelite camps? There's never enough. That's why God calls them greedy dogs, because they, slumbering dogs. They can never have enough. They're greedy. When have you heard any one of these preachers, any one of these camp leaders say, oh, you know what? That's too much. You guys gave too much money this week. Don't give anymore. That's too much. You never hear that. Never. But go ahead, though.
It says, for the stuff they had was sufficient for all the work to make it, and too much. And every wise-hearted man among them that brought the work of the tabernacle made 10 curtains of fine twined linen, and blue and purple and scarlet, with cherubims of cunning work made he them. The length of one curtain was 28 cubits, and the breadth of one curtain 4 cubits. The curtains were all of one size. And he coupled the 5 curtains one unto another, and the other 5 curtains as he coupled one unto another. And he made loops of blue on the edge of one curtain from the selvage in the coupling. Likewise, he made in the uttermost side of another curtain in the coupling of the second. 50 loops made he in one curtain, and 50 loops made he in the edge of the curtain, which was in the coupling of the second. The loops held one curtain to another. And he made 50 taches of gold and couple of curtains, one unto another, which the tachers, so it became one tabernacle. And he made curtains of goat hair for the tent over the tabernacle. 11 curtains he made them. The length of one curtain was 30 cubits, and 4 cubits was the breadth of one curtain. The 11 curtains were of one size. And he coupled 5 curtains by themselves, and 6 curtains by themselves. And he made 50 loops upon the uttermost edge of the curtain in the coupling, and 50 loops made he upon the edge of the curtain which coupled the second. And he made 50 taches of brass to couple the 10 together, that it might be one. And he made a covering for the tents of ram skin dyed red, and covering of badger skin above that. And he made boards for the tabernacle of shittim wood standing up. The length of the board was 10 cubits, and the breadth of the board 1 cubit and a half. One board had 2 tenons equal distance from one another. Thus did he made for all the boards of the tabernacle. And he made boards from the tabernacle, 20 boards from the south side southward. And 40 sockets of silver he made under the 20 boards, 2 sockets under one board for his 2 tenons, and 2 sockets under another board for his 2 tenons. And for the other side of the tabernacle, which is towards the north corner, he made 20 boards, and there 40 sockets of the silver, 2 sockets under one board and 2 sockets under another board. And for the side of the tabernacle westward he made 6 boards, and 2 boards made he for the corner of the tabernacle, the two sides, and they were coupled beneath and coupled together at the head thereof. To one ring thus he did to both of them in both of the corners. And there were 8 boards, and their socket were 16 sockets of silver under every board 2 sockets. And he made boards of shittim wood, 5 for the board of the one side of the tabernacle, and 5 bars for the board of the other side of the tabernacle, and 5 bars for the board of the tabernacles for the side westward. And he made the middle bar uh, to shoot through the board from the one end to another. And he overlaid the boards with gold and made the rings of gold to be placed for the bars, and overlaid the bars with gold. And he made a veil of blue and purple and scarlet and 5 twin linen, which with cherubims made he it of cunning work. And he made thereunto 4 pillars of shittim wood, and overlaid them with gold. Their hook were of gold, and he cast for them 4 sockets of silver. And he made an hanging for the tabernacle door of blue, and purple, and scarlet, and fine twined linen of needlework. And the 5 pillar of it with their hook, and he overlaid their uh, chapiters and their filters with gold, but their 5 sockets were of brass.
All right, so that was the construction of the tabernacle. They did it according to exactly how the Most High had instructed Moses. So now the tabernacle is completed. We're going to go to Exodus 40 and read about the erecting of the tabernacle. All right, so I'll read this one. The book of Exodus, chapter 40 and verse 1 says, And the Lord spake unto Moses, saying, On the first day of the first month shalt thou set up the tabernacle of the tent of the congregation, and thou shalt put therein the ark of the testimony, and cover the ark with the veil. And thou shalt bring in the table, and set in order the things that are to be set in order upon it. And thou shalt bring in the candlestick, and light the lamps thereof. Verse 5, And thou shalt set the altar of gold for the incense before the ark of the testimony, and put the hanging of the door to the tabernacle. And thou shalt set the altar of the burnt offering before the door of the tabernacle of the tent of the congregation. And thou shalt set the laver between the tent of the congregation and the altar, and shalt put water therein. And thou shalt set up the court round about, and hang up the hanging at the court gate. And thou shalt take the anointing oil, and anoint the tabernacle and all that is therein, and shalt hallow it, and all the vessels thereof, and it shall be holy. And thou shalt anoint the altar of the burnt offering, and all his vessels, and sanctify the altar, and shall be an altar most holy. And thou shalt anoint the laver in his foot, and sanctify it. And thou shalt bring Aaron and his sons unto the door of the tabernacle of the congregation, and wash them with water. And thou shalt put upon Aaron the holy garments, and anoint him, and sanctify him, that he may minister unto me in the priest's office. And thou shalt bring his sons, and clothe them with coats, and thou shalt anoint them as thou didst anoint their father, that they may minister unto me in the priest's office. For their anointing shall surely be an everlasting priesthood throughout their generations. Thus did Moses according to all that the Lord commanded him, so did he. And it came to pass in the first month, in the second year, on the first day of the month, that the tabernacle was reared up. So you can see, let's read that again. And it came to pass in the first month, in the second year, on the first day of the month, that the tabernacle was reared up. So what does that tell you? That approximately 2 weeks before Passover, the tabernacle was completed and was put up. It says that Moses reared up the tabernacle, and this was the second year after they left out of Egypt. All right. It says that Moses reared up the tabernacle, and fastened his sockets, and set up the boards thereof, and put in the bars thereof, and reared up his pillars. And he spread abroad the tent over the tabernacle, and put the covering of the tent above upon it, as the Lord commanded Moses. And he took and put the testimony into the ark, and set the staves on the ark, and put the mercy seat above upon the ark. And he brought the ark into the tabernacle and set up the veil of the covering and covered the ark of the testimony as the Lord commanded Moses. Verse 22. And he put the table in the tent of the congregation upon the side of the tabernacle northward without the veil. And he set the bread in order upon it before the Lord, as the Lord had commanded Moses. And he put the candlestick in the tent of the congregation over against the table, on the side of the tabernacle southward. And he lighted the lamps before the Lord, as the Lord commanded Moses. And he put the golden altar in the tent of the congregation before the veil. And he burnt sweet incense thereon. And the Lord commanded Moses. And he set up the hanging at the door of the tabernacle. And he put the altar of burnt offering by the door of the tabernacle of the tent of the congregation, and offered upon it the burnt offering and the meat offering, as the Lord commanded Moses. Verse 31. And Moses and Aaron and his sons washed their hands and their feet thereat, when they went into the tent of the congregation. And when they came near unto the altar, they washed as the Lord commanded Moses. So what would these diverse washings be called in the New Testament? They would be called baptisms. You notice that they washed Aaron and his sons, and then Aaron and his sons washed their hands and they washed their feet. But remember, we went over, that was the last week, about Christ commanding his apostles that they wash each other's feet, the washing of feet. This goes back even to this. All right. If you doubt what we're saying about Christ giving us a new way to perform baptism, that there is some water needed. We believe the same thing, that there was no water needed, but there is some water needed. You don't need to get dunked in water. That's not the baptism. All right. So that's another topic. We covered a little bit of that in the last lesson that we did. Just wanted to mention this, since it's talking about them washing their hands and washing their feet. It says, and he reared up the court round about the tabernacle and the altar, and set up the hanging of the court gate. So Moses finished the work. So we're going on to verse 34. It says, then a cloud covered the tent of the congregation, and the glory of the Lord filled the tabernacle. And Moses was not able to enter into the tent of the congregation, because the cloud abode thereon, and the glory of the Lord filled the tabernacle. And when the cloud was taken up from over the tabernacle, the children of Israel went onward in all their journeys. But if the cloud were not taken up, then they journeyed not till the day that it was taken up. For the cloud of the Lord was upon the tabernacle by day, and fire was on it by night, in the sight of all the house of Israel throughout all their journeys. So what would happen is, when the Lord was ready for Israel to move, then the cloud would be taken up from the tabernacle. That's when they would know it was time to go. And then when the cloud would come back down, they knew it was time to stop, put the sanctuary back up, and camp in that spot where, you know what I mean, where they were. And the cloud that it's talking about was a chariot that was was basically following the children of Israel, actually leading them. They were following it. All right. So that's the tabernacle being, the instructions was given to Moses. He followed the instructions. The people gave offerings of, gold and silver and brass, and of different types of linens. You know what I mean? So that way the tent can be made. All right. So we're going to continue on learning some more about this tabernacle. All right. So let's go to the book of Numbers, chapter 1 and verse 15. You're going to read through verse 53. So we read already that it was Aaron and his sons that were put to work over the congregation and over the tabernacle. Now this is going to go more in depth as to who exactly is appointed over doing the work of the tabernacle. Go ahead and read. You're muted.
The book of Numbers, chapter 1 and verse 1. And the Lord spake
No,
unto
no, you
Moses.
read Numbers 1 and 50 through 53. Just three.
Oh,
He was reading
52.
three scriptures, yeah. 50 through 53.
Okay. Numbers chapter 1 and verse 50. But thou shalt appoint the Levites over the tabernacle of testimony, and over all the vessels thereof, and over all the things that belong to it. And they shall bear the tabernacles and the vessels thereof, and they shall minister unto it, and shall encamp round about the tabernacle. And when the tabernacle setteth forward, the Levites shall take it down. And when the tabernacle is to be pitched, the Levites shall set it up. And the strangers that cometh night shall be put to death.
So the strangers that it's talking about is not talking about the strangers of the other nations. It's talking about the strangers of the children of Israel that are not Levites, because they do not have the clearance to do the work that the Levites have. This job, this work was given specifically to the tribe of Levi. And if you weren't from the tribe of Levi, you were considered a stranger if you tried to come close and erect the tabernacle. You would get put to death for it. If you were of any other tribe and you tried to come and touch that tent to raise that tent up, you would get put to death for it. All right, that's how serious it was. Go ahead and read on, though.
And the children of Israel shall pitch their tents, every man by his own camp, and every man by his own.
Which one are you at?
Verse 52.
Oh, okay.
And the children of Israel shall pitch their tents, every man by his own camp, and every man by his own standard throughout their host. But the Levites shall pitch round about the tabernacle of testimony, that there be no wrath upon the congregation of the children of Israel. And the Levites shall keep the charge of the tabernacle of testimony.
So it was up to the Levites to keep, to keep the charge, to do the work. The other tribes were not allowed to do the work of the Levites. He says, but the Levites shall pitch round about the tabernacle of testimony, that there be no wrath upon the congregation of the children of Israel. This is how you know, because it clarifies who he was calling strangers in verse 51. That's why you got to read. That's why you got to go precept upon precept, line upon line, here a little and there a little, so you can get understanding. Because there are even Israelite camps that I've heard say there is nowhere in the Bible where God ever referred to the children of Israel as strangers. It's like, what are you talking about? It's in several places in the scriptures that the Most High referred to the children of Israel as strangers. And this is one of those instances. In verse 51, and the stranger that cometh nigh shall be put to death. Who was it that would be put to death if they tried to come close? Verse 53 clarifies it. But the Levites shall pitch round about the tabernacle of testimony, that there be no wrath upon the congregation of the children of Israel. And the Levites shall keep the charge of the tabernacle of testimony. It's the children of Israel. If you are from the tribe of Judah, you're a tribe of Gad, you were a Gadite, you were an Issacharite, any other tribe, you tried to go and do the work of the Levites and setting up that tabernacle, you would get put to death. No questions asked. All right. Let's go to Numbers chapter 9 and verse 15 through 23.
The book of Numbers, chapter 9 and verse 15. And on the day that the tabernacle was raised up, the cloud covered the tabernacle, namely the tent of the testimony.
So this is another name for it, the tent of the testimony. We heard it earlier that it was called the tabernacle, the congregation of the tabernacle. Now I'm forgetting it now. Now I'm messing it up. But there's a few different names that you will find that they're calling the tabernacle. Go ahead, though.
And at evening there was upon the tabernacle, as it were, the appearance of fire until the morning. So it was always the cloud cover it by day and the appearance of fire by night. And when the cloud was taken up from the tabernacle, then after that the children of Israel journeyed, and in the place where the cloud abode, there the children of Israel pitched their tents. At the commandment of the Lord, the children of Israel journey, and at the commandment of the Lord, they pitch. As long as the cloud abode upon the tabernacle, they rested in their tent. And when the cloud tarried along upon the tabernacle many days, then the children of Israel kept the charge of the Lord and journeyed not. And so it was when the cloud was a few days upon the tabernacle, according to the commandment of the Lord, they abode in their tents, and according to the commandment of the Lord, they journeyed. And so it was when the cloud abode from evening unto the morning, and that the cloud was taken up in the morning, then they journeyed, whether it was by day or by night, that the cloud was taken up, they journeyed. Or whether it were 2 days or a month or a year, that the cloud tarry upon the tabernacle, remaining thereon, the children of Israel abode in their tents and journeyed not, but when it was taken up, they journeyed. At the commandment of the Lord, they rested in the tents, and at the commandment of the Lord, they journeyed. They kept the charge of the Lord, at the commandment of the Lord, by the hand of Moses.
So basically, it's repeating the same thing about what would happen when the cloud came down. They rested. When the cloud lifted up, they moved. All right, they went on their journey. Let's go to 2 Samuel chapter 7 and verse 4 through 17.
Samuel 7 and 4. The book of 2 Samuel chapter 7 and verse 4. And it came to pass that night that the word of the Lord came unto Nathan, saying, Go and tell my servant David, thus saith the Lord, shalt thou build me an house for me to dwell in? Whereas I have not dwelt in any house since the time that I brought up the children of Israel out of Egypt, even to this day, but have walked in a tent, in a tabernacle. In all the place wherein I have walked with all the children of Israel, spake I a word with any of the tribes of Israel, whom I commanded to feed my people Israel, saying, Why build ye not me a house of cedar? Now therefore, for so shalt thou say unto my servant David, thus said the Lord of hosts, I took thee from the sheepcote,
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
sheepcote, from following the sheep, to be ruler over my people, over Israel. And as I was with thee whithersoever thou wentest, and have cut off all thy enemies out of thy sight, and have made thee a great name, like unto the name of the great men that are in the earth. Whereover I will appoint a place for my people Israel, and will plant them, that they may dwell in a place of their own, and move no more. Neither shall the children of wickedness afflict them any more as before time. And as since the time that I commanded judges to be over my people Israel, and have caused thee to rest from all thine enemies, also the Lord telleth thee that he will make thee an house. And when thy days be fulfilled, and thou shalt sleep with thy fathers, I will set up thy seed after thee, which shall proceed out of the bowels, and I will establish his kingdom. He shall build an house for my name, and I will establish the throne of his kingdom forever. I will be his father, and he shall be my son. If he commit iniquity, I will chastise him with the rod of men, and with the stripes of the children of men. But my mercy shall not depart away from him, as I took it from Saul, whom I put away before thee. And thy house and thy kingdom shall be established forever before thee. Thy throne shall be established forever. According to all these words and according to all his visions, so did Nathan speak unto David.
So you can see what ended up happening is later on, after we had become a kingdom, Saul was king. Saul, the kingdom got taken away from Saul. It was given to David. And Solomon was appointed to build, the temple for the Most High, to build him a house. So he's explaining the reason why. So in verse 6, he says, whereas I have not dwelt in any house since the time that I brought up the children of Israel out of Egypt, even to this day, but have walked in a tent and in a tabernacle. So, the tabernacle was tabernacle was a temporary thing. It wasn't meant for, for it to be a permanent dwelling place for the Most High, or a permanent place for us to worship. It was temporary for us to get into the land, for us to build a temple in the land where we can, go and worship him and for him to dwell. All right. So we're going to backtrack just a little bit, just going over a little bit more about this tabernacle, because there's a little bit more significance spiritually about this tabernacle than what you would read just by reading the Old Testament and the building of the tabernacle. Remember, earlier I said, remember the veil and what that veil represented when he was telling him to erect the veil, the entrance to the holiest of holies, and so on. So we're going to go to the New Testament real quick and get some clarification, some understanding about, what this veil represented in regards to Christ. So let's go to Hebrews chapter 6 and verse 13 through 20.
The book of Hebrews, chapter 6 and verse 13. For when God made promise to Abraham, because he could swear by no greater, he swore by himself, saying, surely blessing I will bless thee, and multiplying I will multiply thee. And so, after he had patiently endured, he obtained the promise. For men verily swear by the greater, and an oath for a confirmation is to them and an end of all strife, wherein God, willing more abundantly to show unto the heirs of promise the immutability of his counsel, confirmed it by an oath, that by two immutable things in which it was impossible for God to live, we might have
possible for God to lie.
Possible for God to lie, we might have a strong consolation who have fled for refuge to lay hold upon the hope set before us, which hope we have as an anchor of the soul, both sure and steadfast, and which entereth into within the veil, whither the forerunner is for us enter, even Jesus made and high priest forever after the order of Melchizedek.
So I'm going to back up to verse 16. It says, for men verily swear by the greater, and an oath for confirmation is to them an end of all strife, wherein God, willing more abundantly to show unto the heirs of promise the immutability of his counsel, confirmed it by an oath, that by two immutable things in which it was impossible for God to lie, we might have a strong consolation, who have fled for refuge to lay hold upon the hope set before us, which hope we have as an anchor of the soul, both sure and steadfast, and which entereth into that within the veil, whither the forerunner is for us entered, even Jesus made an high priest forever after the order of Melchizedek. Because we just read that it was Aaron and his sons, it was their job to enter into that veil, the high priest to enter into that veil. And we're going to read on to what the job of the high priest was. What was the purpose behind the high priest going into that veil? But now the high priest that's, entering into that veil is Christ. All right. So let's go to Leviticus 16 and 2 real quick, because this explains the veil a little bit.
The book of Leviticus, chapter 16 and verse 2. And the Lord said unto Moses, Speak unto Aaron thy brother, that he came not at all times into the holy place, within the veil before the mercy seat,
See,
which is upon the ark, that he die not, for I will appear in the cloud upon the mercy seat.
and so again, the Most High is telling Moses, he's telling him to speak to his brother. Remember, Aaron is Moses' brother. That's why he says, Speak unto Aaron thy brother, that he come not at all times into the holy place. He's telling him, don't just come in there whenever you feel like it. Within the veil before the mercy seat, which is upon the ark, that he die not, for I will appear in the cloud upon the mercy seat. So he's telling, make sure you let him know, don't come in there, you know what I mean? Just whenever he feels like it. Let's go to verse 25.
Verse 25. And the fat of the sin offering shall be.
Start at verse 20. Start at 23.
Verse 23. And Aaron shall come into the tabernacle of the congregation, and shall put off the linen garment which he put on when he went into the holy place, and shall leave them there. And he shall wash his flesh with water in the holy place, and put
Go ahead, though.
And put on his garment, and come forth, and offer his burnt offering and the burnt offering of the people, and make an atonement for himself and for the people. And the fat of the sin offering shall he burn upon the altar.
All right. So that was part of the reason for him to go into that veil, where the altar is at, where he did what? He burned the offerings, or the burnt offerings, to make what? Atonement for the children of Israel. Let's go to Hebrews 9 and 1 through 28 explains it. I'll read it. So, keep switching off. Hebrews 9 and verse 1. All right. So we got to go from the Old Testament to the New. You got to keep jumping back and forth to get the understanding of what's going on with this veil and what the purpose behind the veil was. So Hebrews 9 and 1. Then verily the first covenant had also ordinances of divine service and a worldly sanctuary. For there was a tabernacle made, the first, wherein was the candlestick and the table and the showbread, which is called the sanctuary. We just read about all that. That's why we got to go through the history. If you don't go through the history, you don't understand what's going on in the New Testament in regards to when it's talking about the tabernacle and the sanctuary. Verse 3, and after the second veil, the tabernacle, which is called the holiest of all. Remember, we read earlier that he told him to make that veil, which leads to what? The holiest of holies. Verse 4, which had the golden censer and the ark of the covenant overlaid round about with gold, wherein was the golden pot that had manna, and Aaron's rod that budded, and the tables of the covenant. And over it, the cherubims of glory shadowing the mercy seat, of which we cannot now speak particularly. In other words, it had the Ark of the Covenant in there. Remember, the Ark of the Covenant was set inside that veil with the mercy seat. Verse 6, now when these things were thus ordained, the priest went always into the first tabernacle, accomplishing the service of God. But into the second went the high priest alone, once every year, not without blood, which he offered for himself and for the heirs of the people. Remember, we just read about that the high priest at that time was Aaron, that he had to go into that veil. He had to go into that separate room where he had to wash himself and consecrate himself before he can offer an offering for himself and make an offering for the people. Verse 8, the Holy Ghost, this signifying that the way into the holiest of all was not yet made manifest, while as the first tabernacle was yet standing. So the way to get to the holiest of all places, it hadn't been manifest yet. How do you make it? Because remember, the tabernacle was a splitting image of what was in heaven. So how do you get there? It wasn't, nobody knew, which was a figure for the time then present, in which were offered both gifts and sacrifices that could not make him that did the service perfect, as pertaining to the conscience, which stood only in meats and drinks, meaning meat offerings and drink offerings and diverse washings. Remember, we just read about those diverse washings, which are called what? Baptisms, and carnal ordinances imposed on them until the time of Reformation. Verse 11, but Christ being come and high priest of good things to come, by a greater and more perfect tabernacle, not made with hands, that is to say, not of this building. You see, Christ came to do what? He came, as a high priest to, of good things to come, by what? A greater and more perfect tabernacle, not made by hands. His is spiritual. That is to say, not of this building. His was not of that first tabernacle or, that sanctuary. Verse 12, it'll make more sense as it goes on. Neither by the blood of goats and calves, but by his own blood he entered in once into the holy place, having obtained eternal redemption for us. Where was that place he entered into? We'll keep reading, see if you can figure it out. Verse 13. For if the blood of bulls and of goats and the ashes of an heifer sprinkling the unclean sanctify it to the purifying of the flesh. Remember some of those ordinances for, what's it called? Leprosy, when they had to, sprinkle the burnt ashes, the heifer and all that, and mix it with the water and, and use it to clean, to clean the flesh. That's what is going into all these different ordinances. It says, how much more shall the blood of Christ, who through the eternal Spirit offered himself without spot to God, purge your conscience from dead works to serve the living God? And for this cause, he is the mediator of the New Testament, that by means of death, for the redemption of the transgressions that were under the First Testament, they which are called might receive the promise of eternal inheritance. And remember who are the called. Verse 16, for where a testament is, there must also of necessity be the death of the testator. For a testament is of force after men are dead. Otherwise, it is of no strength at all while the testator liveth. Whereupon neither the first testament was dedicated without blood. Because remember, when the first testament was dedicated, what did Moses do? Moses took the blood of the goat or what have you, and sprinkled it with the water on top of the people. Verse 19, for when Moses had spoken every precept to all the people according to the law, he took the blood, it's going to say it now, he took the blood of calves and of goats with water and scarlet wool and hyssop, and sprinkled both the book and all the people, saying, this is the blood of the testament which God had enjoined unto you. Moreover, he sprinkled with blood both the tabernacle and all the vessels of the ministry. And almost all things are by the law purged with blood, and without shedding of blood is no remission. That's why Christ had to die, for the remission of our sins. The blood of bulls and goats couldn't do it, so he had to come and offer up himself. He became that perfect, unblemished lamb without spot. Verse 23, it was therefore necessary that the patterns of things in the heavens should be purified with these, but the heavenly things themselves with better sacrifices than these. For Christ has not entered into the holy places made with hands. Let me read that again. For Christ has not entered into the holy places made with hands, which are the figures of the true, but into heaven itself, now to appear in the presence of God for us. So that holiest of holies that Christ entered into was the heavens itself. All right. Verse 25, nor yet that he should offer himself often as the high priest entereth into the holy place every year with blood of others. For then must he often have suffered since the foundation of the world. But now once in the end of the world hath he appeared to put away sin by the sacrifice of himself. And as it is appointed unto men once to die, but after this the judgment. Verse 28, so Christ was once offered to bear the sins of many, and unto them that look for him shall he appear the second time without sin unto salvation. So a lot of people don't really understand what this veil represented. Every ordinance that we were given back in the Old Testament all led back to Christ. Go to Exodus 26 and 31 through 33. I just finished with Hebrews 9. I keep forgetting to change this thing. So it's Hebrews 9 and 1 through 28. Now we're going to Exodus 26 and 31 through 33. And you're muted still.
Thank you. Let's see. The book of Exodus, chapter 26 and verse 31. It says, and thou shalt make a veil of blue and purple and scarlet and fine twined linen of cunning work, with cherubims shall it be made. And thou shalt hang it upon 4 pillars of shittim wood overlaid with gold. Their hooks shall be of gold upon the 4 sockets of silver. And thou shalt hang up the veil under the taches, that thou mayest bring in there within the veil the ark of the testimony, and the veil shall divide unto you between the holy place and the most holy.
So remember, it's dividing between who? Him, the holy place, and the most holy. All right. So grab Exodus 36 and 35 through 38.
35. The book of Exodus, chapter 36 and verse 35. And he made a veil of blue and purple and scarlet and fine twined linen. With cherubims made he it of cunning work. And he made thereunto 4 pillars of shittim wood and overlaid them with gold. Their hooks were of gold, and he cast for them 4 sockets of silver. And he made an hanging for the tabernacle door of blue and purple and scarlet and fine twined linen of needle work. And the 5 pillars of it with their hooks, and he overlaid their chapters and their fillets with gold, but their 5 sockets were of brass.
All right. So we can see that again, we're just backtracking a little bit, showing that they were giving command to make this tabernacle, and in the midst of making this tabernacle, to create this veil, which separated the holy from the most holiest. All right, or from the Holy of Holies. Let's go to Hebrews 10 and 1 through 23.
The book of Hebrews, chapter 10 and verse 1. For the law having a shadow of good things to come, and
so
not the...
For the law having a shadow of good things to come. It was just, we were under a schoolmaster. A lot of the things that were going on in the Old Testament, all of it led back to Christ. Go ahead.
And not the very image of the things can never, with those sacrifices which they offer year by year, continually make the commerce thereunto perfect.
So what this is talking about is going back to the Day of Atonement. And we're going to get to it in a second. Go ahead and read.
For then would they not have ceased to be offered, because the hold on, I'll read that again. For then would they not have ceased to be offered, because that the worshippers once purged should have had no more conscience of sins.
So after you did the Day of Atonement, you gave your sacrifices, you did, your fasting and everything like that. Your conscience should have been purged of sins. But that's not what was happening with Israel. Just like today, people do the Day of Atonement and go right back to sinning. Go ahead.
But in those sacrifices there is a remembrance again made of sin every year. For it is not possible that the blood of bulls and goats should take away sin. But wherefore, when he cometh into the world, he said, Sacrifice and offering thou wouldest not, but a body hast thou prepared me. In burnt offerings and sacrifices for sin thou hast had no pleasure. Then said I, Lo, I come in the volume of the book, it is written of me, to do thy will, O God. Above, when he said, Sacrifice and offering, a burnt offering, and offering for sin, thou wouldest not, neither has pleasure therein, which are of fair by the law. Then said he, Lo, I come in thy will, O God. He
I come
taketh
to
away.
do thy will, O God.
Then said he, Lo, I come to do thy will, O God. He taketh away the first, that he may establish the second, by the which will we are sanctified through the offering of the body of Jesus Christ once for all. And every priest standeth daily ministering and offering oftentimes the same sacrifice, which can never take away sin. But this man, after he had offered one sacrifice for sin forever, sat down on the right hand of God, from henceforth expecting till his enemies be made his footstool. For by one offering he had perfected forever them that are sanctified. Wherefore the Holy Ghost also is a witness to us, for after that he had said before, This is the covenant that I will make with them after those days, saith the Lord. I will put my laws into their hearts, and in their minds will I write them, and their sins and iniquities will I remember no more. Now wherefore remission of this is, there is no more offerings for sin. Having therefore, brethren, boldness to enter into the holiest by the blood of Jesus, by a new and living way which he had consecrated for us through the veil, that is to say, his flesh.
Read that again.
The veil, that is
Through
to
the
say,
veil.
say that again.
Through the veil.
Through the veil, that is to say, his flesh.
So what is the veil? What does the veil represent?
His flesh.
His flesh. It says, by a new and living way which he hath consecrated for us through the veil, that is to say, his flesh. That's what that veil represented. All right. So it's through that veil that we got to the holiest of holies. It's through his flesh, through him dying on that cross, the shedding of his blood, that we have a chance to go to the holiest of holies, that we could pass through that veil. If it makes sense, you got to have ears to hear. If for it to make sense, if it doesn't make sense to you, you got to go back and read all this and study it so it
Right.
can make sense to you. Go ahead though.
And having an high priest over the house of God, let us draw near with a true heart and full assurance of faith, having our hearts sprinkled from an evil conscience and our bodies washed with pure water. Let us hold fast the profession of our faith without wavering, for he is faithful that promised.
All right. So that's what we have to make sure that we're doing, that when we're teaching, that we're purging our people, their conscience. We have to ensure that we're sprinkling their conscience and their bodies and washing them with pure water. What is that pure water? With this word, with the word of God. There's, like I said, there's a lot more to this than just, know ye not that ye are the temple of God. And people say, yeah, I know I'm, defiling my temple. That's all they understand about the temple of God, is that, if you smoke or you drink, you're defiling your temple. But they really have no understanding of what all of this stood for. No understanding of it. All right. So that's dealing with the tabernacle. Now we're going to get into Solomon's temple, the first temple that was built. So again, write this down so you could get understanding of it. Actually, no, before we get to that, we got to go to Leviticus 16:1. Do we really need to read that? Leviticus 16:1 is dealing with the Day of Atonement, which explains more what this is talking about. That one day a year that the high priest would enter in to give, we got to read it just to give it context so people can have an understanding. So Leviticus 16:1-34.
The book of Leviticus, chapter 16 and verse 1. And they took their journey from Elam, and all the congregation of the children of Israel. Leviticus, hold on. Flip too many pages. 16. There we go. Leviticus chapter 16:1. And the Lord spake unto Moses after the death of the two sons of Aaron, when they offered before the Lord, and said, And the Lord said unto Moses, Speak unto Aaron thy brother, that he come not at all times into the holy place within the veil before the mercy seat which is upon the ark, that he die not, for I will appear in the cloud upon the mercy seat. Thus shall Aaron come into the holy place with a young bullock for a sin offering, and a ram for a burnt offering.
So that was Aaron's job, to go into the holy place with a young bullock for a sin offering and a ram for a burnt offering. Go ahead.
He shall put on the holy linen coat, and he shall have the linen breeches upon his flesh, and shall be girded with a linen girdle, and with a linen mitre shall he be attired. These are holy garments, therefore shall he wash his flesh in water, and so put them on. And he shall take off the congregation of the children of Israel 2 kids of the goats from a sin offering, and 1 ram for a burnt offering. And Aaron shall offer his bullock of the sin offering, which is for himself, and make an atonement for himself and for his house. And he shall take the 2 goats and present them before the Lord at the door of the tabernacle of the congregation. And Aaron shall cast lots upon the 2 goats, 1 lot for the Lord, and the other lot for the scapegoat. And Aaron shall bring the goat upon which the Lord's lot fell, and offer him for a sin offering. But the goat on which the lot fell to be the scapegoat shall be presented alive before the Lord to make an atonement with him, and to let him go for a scapegoat into the wilderness. And Aaron shall bring the bullock of the sin offering, which is for him, and shall make an atonement for himself and for his house, and shall kill the bullock of the sin offering, which is for him. And he shall take a censer full of burning coal of fire from off the altar before the Lord, and his hands full of sweet incense between beaten small, and bring it within the veil. And he shall put the incense upon the fire before the Lord, that the cloud of the incense may cover the mercy seat that is upon the testimony, that he die not. And he shall take off the blood of the bullock and sprinkle it with his finger upon the mercy seat eastward. And before the mercy seat shall he sprinkle of the blood with his finger 7 times. Then shall he kill the goat of the sin offering, that it is for the people, and bring his blood with the veil, and do with that blood as he did with the blood of the bullock, and sprinkle it upon the mercy seat and before the mercy seat.
So let me read that. It says, then shall he kill the goat of the sin offering that is for the people, and bring his blood within the veil, and do with that blood as he did with the blood of the bullock, and sprinkle it upon the mercy seat and before the mercy seat. Go ahead.
And he shall make an atonement for the holy place because of the uncleanness of the children of Israel.
Because
And
of what?
because of the uncleanness of the children of Israel.
So he had to do this because of the uncleanness of the children of Israel. Read.
And because of their transgressions and all their sins. And so shall he do for the tabernacle of the congregation that remaineth among them in the midst of their uncleanness. And there shall be no more in the tabernacle of the congregation when he goeth in to make an atonement in the holy place, until he come out and have made an atonement for himself and for his household and for all the congregation of Israel. And he shall go out unto the altar that is before the Lord, and make an atonement for it, and shall take of the blood of the bullock and of the blood of the goat, and put it upon the horns of the altar round about. And he shall sprinkle of the blood upon it with his finger 7 times, and cleanse it, and hallow it for the uncleanness of the children of Israel.
So this is all dealing with the Day of Atonement. These were the sacrifices that were expected to be made on the Day of Atonement. Go ahead.
And when he had made an end of reconciling the holy place and the tabernacle of the congregation and the altar, he shall bring the live goat. And Aaron shall lay both his hands upon the head of the live goat, and confess over him all the iniquities of the children of Israel, and all their transgressions and all their sins, putting them upon the head of the goat, and shall send him away by the hand of a fit man into the wilderness. And the goat shall bear upon him all their iniquities unto a land not inhabited, and he shall let go the goat in the wilderness. And Aaron shall come into the tabernacle of the congregation, and shall put off the linen garment which he put on when he went into the holy place, and shall leave them there. And he shall wash his flesh with water in the holy place, and put on his garment, and come forth, and offer his burnt offering and the burnt offering of the people, and make an atonement for himself and for the people. And the fat of the sin offering shall he burn upon the altar. And he that let go the goat for the scapegoat shall wash his clothes and bathe his flesh in the water, and afterward come into the camp. And the bullock for the sin offering and the goat for the sin offering, whose blood was brought into make an atonement in the holy place, shall one carry forth without the camp. And they shall burn in the fire their skin and their flesh and their dung. And he that burneth them shall wash his clothes and bathe his flesh in water, and afterward he shall come into the camp. And this shall be a statute forever unto you, that in the 7th month, on the 10th day of the month, ye shall afflict your souls and do no work at all.
So
Whether
what
it
happens
be
on the 7th month, on the 10th day of the month? The Day of Atonement, right? So all of this has to go back to the Day of Atonement, what you're reading about in Hebrews 9 and 10, goes back to what we're reading about here in Leviticus 16 about the sacrifices that had to be done each year for the Day of Atonement. So people understand Christ in regards to the Passover, and that Christ was the Passover lamb, but failed to understand that not only was Christ the Passover lamb, but he was also the goat or the bull or what have you that had to be taken into the holiest of holies and sacrifice to make atonement for the children of Israel for the Day of Atonement. That also represents Christ. And a lot of people don't realize that. So it says, and this shall be a statute forever unto you, that in the 7th month, on the 10th day of the month, ye shall afflict your souls and do no work at all. Read on. Verse 29.
Verse 29. And this shall be a statute forever unto you, that in the 7th month, on the 10th day of the month, ye shall afflict your souls and do no work at all, whether it be one of you, your own country, or a stranger that sojourneth among you. For on that day shall the priest make an atonement for you to place you, that ye may be clean from all your sins before the Lord.
So it says, for on that day shall the priest make an atonement for you to cleanse you, that ye may be clean from all your sins before the Lord. So Christ took the place of the animal that was sacrificed. Christ became that sacrifice for the Day of Atonement and for the Passover. All right. So go ahead.
It shall be a Sabbath of rest unto you, and ye shall afflict your souls by a statute forever. And the priest whom he shall anoint, and whom he shall consecrate to minister in the stead, shall make the atonement, and shall put on the linen cloth, even the holy garment. And he shall make an atonement for the holy sanctuary, and he shall make an atonement for the tabernacle of the congregation, for the altar. And he shall make an atonement for the priest, for all the people of the congregation. And there shall be an everlasting statute unto you, to make an atonement for the children of Israel for all their sins once a year. And he did as the Lord commanded Moses.
Because there are some people that are teaching that since Christ was the sacrifice for the Day of Atonement, we ain't got to do the Day of Atonement no more. That's not true. We just don't have to do the sacrifices on the Day of Atonement anymore. But we still got to fast. We still got to afflict ourselves. See how this works? Let's go to, now we're going to go to Solomon's temple. So Solomon's temple, write this down if you don't have it. The temple was built in 968 BC. So we're going to go through this history. And the temple was destroyed by Nebuchadnezzar in 586 BC. So the temple was built in 968 and it got destroyed in 586 by Nebuchadnezzar. When the Babylonians came into Jerusalem and they took over the city, they took everything out of the temple. They took the menorah, they took the the showbread tables, all the gold utensils, all the golden cups. They took everything and burnt the temple, destroyed the temple. So we're going to read about that history. First, we're going to read about the building of the temple. Then we're going to read about the destruction of the temple. So go to 1 Kings chapter 5 and verse 2, and you're going to read through verse 11. So we probably aren't going to finish this lesson today. We'll have to break it up into 2 parts again and finish the second part next Sabbath.
The book of First Kings, chapter 5 and verse 2. And Solomon sent to Hiram, saying, Thou knowest how that David my father could not build an house unto the name of the Lord his God, for the wars which were about him on every side, until the Lord put them under the soles of his feet. But now the Lord my God had given me rest on every side, so that there is neither adversary nor evil occurring. And behold, I purpose to build a house unto the name of the Lord my God, as the Lord spake unto David my father, saying, Thy son, whom I will set upon thy throne in thy room, he shall build an house unto my name. Now therefore command thou that they hew me cedar trees out of Lebanon, and my servants shall be with thy servants, and unto thee will I give hire for thy servants according to all that thou shalt appoint. For thou knowest that there is not among us any that can skill to hew timber like unto the Sidonians. And it came to pass, when Hiram heard the word of Solomon, that he rejoiced greatly and said, Blessed be the Lord this day, which had given unto David a wise son over his great people. And Hiram sent to Solomon, saying, I have considered the thing which thou sentest to me for, and I will do all thy desire concerning timber and of cedar, and concerning timber of fir. My servant shall bring them down from Lebanon unto the sea, and I will convey them by the sea in floats unto the place that thou shalt appoint me, and I will cause them to be discharged there, and thou shalt receive them, and thou shalt accomplish my desire in giving food for my household. So Hiram gave Solomon cedar trees, fir trees, according to all his desire. And Solomon gave Hiram 20,000 measures of wheat for food to his household, and 20 measures of pure oil. Thus gave Solomon to Hiram year by year.
So this is talking about Solomon going to his friend Hiram, who was of another nation. As it says, he was aside from the Sidonians. And he told him in verse 3, Thou knowest how that David my father could not build an house unto the name of the Lord his God, for the wars which were about him on every side, until the Lord put them under the soles of his feet. Remember, the Most High had told David he couldn't allow him to build a house. He had too much blood in his hands. He had fought in too many wars. So he had to use Solomon in order to build the temple. All right. So that was the prophecy that was given to King David, that his son would build the temple. All right. So let's go to 1 Kings chapter 5 and verse 12 through 18.
The book of 1 Kings chapter 5 and verse 12. And the Lord gave Solomon wisdom as he promised him, and there was peace between Hiram and Solomon, and they two made a league together. And King Solomon raised a levy out of all Israel, and the levy was 30,000 men. And he sent them to Lebanon, 10,000 a month by courses. A month they were in Lebanon, and 2 months at home. And Adoniram was over the levy. And Solomon had 70,000 that bare burdens, and 80,000 hewers in the mountains, beside the chief of Solomon's officers which were over the work, 3,300 which rule over the people that brought in the work. And the king commanded, and they brought great stones, costly stones, and huge stones to lay the foundation of the house. And Solomon built, and Hiram builders did hew them. and the stone squarers. So they prepared timber and stones to build the house.
Grab First Kings chapter 6 and verse 1 and going to read through verse 38. And this is going to be going into the building of the temple, which took 7 years.
The book of First Kings, chapter 6 and verse 1. And it came to pass in the 408th year after the children of Israel were come out of the land of Egypt, in the 4th year of the Solomon reign over Israel, in the month Ziph, which is the 2nd month that he began to build the house of the Lord.
So you can see what's going on here. It says, and it came to pass in the 480th year after the children of Israel were come out of the land of Egypt. So the temple began to get built. They had been out of Egypt for 480 years. All right. When you look at this, it says in the month Ziph, which is the 2nd month, you can see that we had adopted the names of months from the other nations. We continually did that. We didn't have names for the months. This is one of the things that got us into trouble, is by adopting. The Most High let us get away with a lot until he couldn't take it anymore. But when you look at the calendar, you put the calendar together, you got some of our people even today using the names, using like a Dar and second Adar and things like that when they put together their calendars. We ain't supposed to be doing, especially with the second Adar, because there ain't no such thing as second Adar. 13th month, adding a whole nother month to the year. But that's another lesson too. But just wanted to bring that out. All right, go ahead and read on.
Verse 2. And the house which King Solomon built for the Lord, the length thereof was 60 cubits, and the breadth thereof 20 cubits, and the height thereof 30 cubits. And the porch before the temple of the house, 20 cubits was the length thereof, according to the breadth of the house, and 10 cubits was the breadth thereof before the house. And for the house he made windows of narrow light, and against the wall of the house he built chambers round about against the wall of the house round about, both of the temple and of the oracle. And he made chambers round about. The nethermost chamber was 5 cubit board, and the middle was 6 cubit board, and the third was 7 cubit board. For without in the wall of the house he made a narrow rest round about, that the beams should not be fastened in the walls of the house. And the house, when it was in building, was built of stone, made ready before it was brought thither, so that there was neither hammer nor axe nor any tool of iron here in the house while it was in building. The door for the middle chamber was in the right side of the house, and they went up with winding stairs into the middle chamber, and out of the middle into the third. So he built the house and finished it, and covered the house with beams and boards of cedar. And then he built chambers against the house, 5 cubits high, and they rested on the house with timber of cedar. And the word of the Lord came to Solomon, saying, concerning this house which thou art in building, if thou wilt walk in my statutes and execute my judgments and keep all my commandments to walk in them, then will I perform my word with thee, which I spake unto David thy father. And I will dwell among the children of Israel, and I will not forsake my people. So Solomon built the house and finished it, and he built the walls of the house within with boards of cedar, both the floor of the house and the walls of the ceiling, and he covered them on the side with wood, and covered the floor of the house with planks of fir. And he built 20 cubits of the side of the house, both the floor and the walls with boards of cedar. He even built them for it within, even for the oracles, even for the most holy place. And the house that is the temple before it was 40 cubits long. And the cedar of the house within was carved with knots and open flowers. All was cedar; there was no stone seen. And the oracle he prepared in the house within to set there the ark of the covenant of the Lord. And the oracle in the forepart was 20 cubits in length, and 20 cubits in breadth, and 20 cubits the height thereof. And he laid it with the pure gold, and so covered the altar which was of cedar. So Solomon overlaid the house within with pure gold, and he made a partition by the chains of gold before the oracle, and he overlaid it with gold. And the whole house overlaid with gold until he had finished all the house. Also the whole altar that was by the oracle he overlaid with gold. And with the oracle he made two cherubims of olive tree, each 10 cubits high. And 5 cubits was the one wing of the cherubim, and 5 cubits the other wing of the cherubim. From the uttermost part of the one wing unto the uttermost part of the other were 10 cubits. And the other cherubim was 10 cubits. Both the cherubims were of one measure and one size. The height of the cherubim was 10 cubits, and so was it of the other cherubim. And he set the cherubims within the inner house, and they stretched forth the wings of the cherubims, so that the wings of the one touch one another, and the wing of the other cherub touched the other wall, and their wings touched one another in the midst of the house. And he overlaid the cherubims with gold, and he carved all the walls of the house round about with carved figures of cherubims and palms, trees, and open flowers within and without. And the floor of the house he overlaid with gold within and without. And for the entering of the oracle he made doors of olive tree. In lintel and side posts were in fifth part of the wall. The two doors also were of olive tree, and he carved upon them carvings of cherubims and palm trees and open flowers, and overlaid them with gold, and spread gold upon the cherubims and upon the palm trees. So also made he for the door of the tabernacle post of olive trees, a fourth part of the walls, and the two doors were of the fir tree. The two leaves of the one door were folding, and the two leaves of the other were folding. And he carved thereon cherubims and palm trees, and upon flowers, and covered them with gold fitted upon the carved work. And he built the inner court with 3 rows of hewn stone, and a row of cedar beams. In the 4th year was the foundation of the house of the Lord laid in the mountain in the month Ziph. And in the 11th year, in the month Bul, which is the 8th month, was the house finished throughout all the parts thereof, and according to all the fashion of it, so was the 7th year in building.
So was he 7 years in building? It took 7 years to build the temple. And again, you can see they're using, the name Bull for another one of the months. Some of our people believe that because, they use it in the Bible, that there's nothing wrong with it. There's a lot of stuff that our forefathers did that were not righteous, that the Most High just kind of let go for a while. Remember, the things that were written aforetime were written for our learning. So we have to make sure we don't make the same mistakes that they made. Let's go to 1 Kings chapter 7 and verse 13 through 51. I'll read this one, give you a break. So 1 Kings chapter 7, verse 13 reads, and King Solomon sent and fetched Hiram out of Tyre. He was a widow's son of the tribe of Naphtali, and his father was a man of Tyre, a worker in brass, and he was filled with wisdom and understanding and cunning to work all works in brass. And he came to King Solomon and wrought all his work. For he cast 2 pillars of brass of cubes. So let me back that up real quick, because some people assume that Hiram was an Israelite. His mother was an Israelite, but his father was of Tyre. He was a Hamite. His father was. He was a widow's son of the tribe of Naphtali, and his father was a man of Tyre, a worker in brass. And he was filled with wisdom and understanding and cunning to work all works in brass. And he came to King Solomon and wrought all his work. For he cast 2 pillars of brass of 18 cubits high apiece, and a line of 12 cubits did compass either of them about. And he made 2 chapiters of molten brass to set upon the tops of the pillars. The height of the one chapiter was 5 cubits, and the height of the other chapiter was 5 cubits. And nets of checker work and reeds of chain work for the chapiters which were upon the top of the pillars, 7 for the one chapiter and 7 for the other chapiter. And he made the pillars in 2 rows round about upon the one network to cover the chapiters that were upon the top with pomegranates. And so did he for the other chapiter. And the chapiters that were upon the top of the pillars were of lily work in the porch 4 cubits. And the chapiters upon the 2 pillars had pomegranates also above, over against the belly which was by the network. And the pomegranates were 200 in rows round about upon the other chapiter. Verse 21. And he set up the pillars in the porch of the temple, and he set up the right pillar, and called the name thereof Jachin. And he set up the left pillar, and he called the name thereof Boaz. And upon the top of the pillars was lily work. So was the work of the pillars finished. And he made a molten sea, 10 cubits from the one brim to the other. It was round all about, and its height was 5 cubits, and the line of 30 cubits did compass it round about. And under the brim of it round about there was knops compassing it, 10 in a cubit compassing the sea round about. The knops were cast in 2 rows when it was cast. Verse 25. It stood upon 12 oxen, 3 looking toward the north, and 3 looking toward the west, and 3 looking toward the south, and 3 looking toward the east. And the sea was set above upon them, and all their hinder parts were inward. And it was an handbreadth thick, and the brim thereof was wrought like the brim of a cup with flowers of lilies. It contained 2,000 baths. So some of our camp leaders will read some of this and say, "See, we had images. We had images." Who gave Solomon permission to make the temple? The Most High did. So the Most High could let go whatever he wants to let go. Just because he allowed Solomon to have images does not mean that we can have images. I don't, like I said, I don't get the thought process of some of our people. Where were we? Verse 26. And it was an handbreadth thick, and the brim thereof was wrought like the brim of a cup with flowers of lilies. It contained 2,000 baths. And he made 10 bases of brass. 4 cubits was the length of one base, and 4 cubits the breadth thereof, and 3 cubits the height of it. And the work of the bases was on this manner. They had borders, and the borders were between the ledges. And on the borders that were between the ledges were lions, oxen, and cherubims. And upon the ledges there was a base above, and beneath the lions and oxen were certain additions made of thin work. And every base had 4 brazen wheels and plates of brass, and the 4 corners thereof had undersetters. Under the labor were undersetters molten at the side of every addition. And the mouth of it within the chapiter and above was a cubit, but the mouth thereof was round after the work of the base, 1 cubit and a half. And also upon the mouth of it were gravings with their borders, 4 square, not round. And under the borders were 4 wheels, and the axle trees of the wheels were joined to the base. And the height of a wheel was a cubit and a half a cubit. And the work of the wheels was like the work of a chariot wheel. Their axle trees and their naves and their felloes and their spokes were all molten. And there were 4 undersetters to the 4 corners of one base, and the undersetters were of the very base itself. Verse 35. And in the top of the base was there a round compass of half a cubit high, and on the top of the base the ledges thereof and the borders thereof were of the same. For on the plates of the ledges thereof and on the borders thereof he graved cherubims, lions, and palm trees, according to the proportion of every one, in additions round about. After this manner he made the 10 bases. All of them had one casting, one measure, and one size. Then made he 10 lavers of brass. One laver contained 40 bats, and every laver was 4 cubits, and upon every one of the 10 bases 1 laver. And he put 5 bases on the right side of the house, and 5 on the left side of the house. And he set the sea on the right side of the house, eastward over against the south. And Hiram made the lavers and the shovels and the basins. So Hiram made an end of doing all the work that he made King Solomon for the house of the Lord. Verse 41. The 2 pillars and the 2 bowls of the chapiters were on the top of the 2 pillars, and the 2 networks to cover the 2 bowls of the chapiters which were upon the top of the pillars, and 400 pomegranates for the 2 networks, even 2 rows of pomegranates for 1 network to cover the 2 bowls of the chapiters which, that were upon the pillars, and the 10 bases and 10 lavers on the bases, and 1 sea and 12 oxen under the sea. Verse 45. And the pots and the shovels and the basins and all these vessels which Hiram made to King Solomon for the house of the Lord were of bright brass. In the plain of Jordan did the king cast them, in the clay ground between Succoth and Zerthan. And Solomon left all the vessels unweighed, because they were exceeding many, neither were without. And Solomon made all the vessels that pertained unto the house of the Lord, the altar of gold, a table of gold, whereupon the showbread was, and the candlesticks of pure gold, 5 on the right side and 5 on the left before the oracle, with the flowers and the lamps and the tongs of gold. Verse 50. And the bowls and the snuffers and the basins and the spoons and the censers of pure gold, and the hinges of gold, both for the doors of the inner house, the most holy place, and for the doors of the house, to wit, of the temple. Verse 51. So was ended all the work that King Solomon made for the house of the Lord. And Solomon brought in the things which David his father had dedicated. Even the silver and the gold and the vessels did he put among the treasures of the house of the Lord. So you can see all the temple furnishings, all, the golden cups, everything, the spoons, everything that they used in the temple. And there was so much of it that they didn't even bother to weigh it because it was just too much. So now let's go to 1 Kings chapter 8 and verse 1 through 11. Now we're going to read about the ark being brought into the temple. So after the temple was completed, now they're going to bring the ark in.
1 Kings chapter 8.
Yeah, and verse 1 through 11.
The book of 1 Kings chapter 8 and verse 1. Then Solomon assembled the elders of Israel and all the heads of the tribes, the chiefs of the fathers of the children of Israel, unto Solomon in Jerusalem, that they might bring up the ark of the covenant of the Lord out of the city of David, which is Zion. And all the men of Israel assembled themselves unto King Solomon at the feast in the month Ethanim, which is the 7th month.
So you see, now we got like three names so far. We've been reading of names of months that they were using. But
and
go ahead.
That name changed from. I might be confused from.
No. It changed from
Fur,
the other, yeah.
From Fur to Ethanim now, right?
Uh-huh.
All right. Which is the 7th month. And all the elders of Israel came in, and the priest took up the ark, and they brought up the ark of the Lord and the tabernacle of the congregation, and all the holy vessels that were in the tabernacle. Even those did the priests and the Levites bring up. And the King Solomon and all the congregation of Israel that were assembled unto him were with him before the ark, sacrificing sheep and oxen that could not be told nor numbered for multitude. And the priest brought in the ark of the covenant of the Lord unto his place, into the oracle of the house, to the most holy place, even under the wings of the cherubims. For the cherubim spread forth their two wings over the place of the ark, and the cherubims cover the ark and the steps thereof. And they drew out of the steps, that the end of the steps were seen out in the holy place before the oracle, and they were not seen without. And there they are unto this day. There was nothing in the ark save the two tables of stone which Moses put there at Horeb, when the Lord made a covenant with the children of Israel when they came out of the land of Egypt. And it came to pass, when the priests were come out of the holy place, that the cloud filled the house of the Lord, so that the priest could not stand to minister because of the cloud, for the glory of the Lord had filled the house of the Lord.
So just like it did with the tabernacle, it became the same with the temple, that the cloud of the Most High would come and fill the temple with the Spirit of the Most High. Let's go to verse 12. I'll read 12 through 21. So 1 Kings chapter 8 and verse 12 says, Then spake Solomon, the Lord said that he would dwell in the thick darkness. I have surely built thee an house to dwell in, a settled place for thee to abide in forever. And the king turned his face about and blessed all the congregation of Israel. And all the congregation of Israel stood. And he said, Blessed be the Lord God of Israel, which spake with his mouth unto David my father, and hath with his hand fulfilled it, saying, Since the day that I brought forth my people Israel out of Egypt, I chose no city out of all the tribes of Israel to build an house, that my name might be therein. But I chose David to be over my people Israel. And it was in the heart of David my father to build an house for the name of the Lord God of Israel. And the Lord said unto David my father, Whereas it was in thine heart to build an house unto my name, thou didst well that it was in thine heart. Verse 19, Nevertheless, thou shalt not build the house, but thy son that shall come forth out of thy loins, he shall build the house unto my name. And the Lord hath performed his word that he spake, and I am risen up in the room of David my father, and sit on the throne of Israel, as the Lord promised, and have built an house for the name of the Lord God of Israel. And I have set there a place for the ark, wherein is the covenant of the Lord, which he made with our fathers when he brought them out of the land of Egypt. All right, so let's go to 1 Chronicles 17 and 4.
The book of 1 Chronicles chapter 17 and verse 4. Go and tell David my servant, thus said the Lord, thou shalt not build me an house to dwell in.
So again, David was being told a house was going to be built, but he's telling you know what? You shouldn't build it. You're not going to build it. Thou shalt not build me an house to dwell in. And he's telling what we just read in 1 Kings 8 and 12 through 21, that he told David, you wanted to build me a house. That was a good thing, that you had that in your heart, that it was on your mind to do such a thing for me, but you won't build it. Your son will build it. That's what we're going to read about next, that Solomon would build the temple. Like I said earlier, David had been in too many wars. He had shed so much blood, or way too much blood, in order to build the house, the sanctuary for the Most High. Go to 1 Chronicles 22 and 7, and you're going to read through verse 11.
The book of 1 Chronicles chapter 22 and verse 7.
Start verse 6.
Verse 6. Then he called for Solomon his son, and charged him to build an house for the Lord God of Israel. And David said to Solomon, my son, as for me, it was in my mind to build an house unto the name of the Lord my God. But the word of the Lord came to me, saying, Thou hast shed blood abundantly, and hast made great wars, and thou shalt not build an house unto my name, because thou hast shed much blood upon the earth in my sight. Behold, a son shall be born to thee, who shall be a man of rest, and I will give him rest from all his enemies round about, for his name shall be Solomon, and I will give place and quietness unto Israel in his
Peace. I will give peace and quietness.
and I will make peace and quietness unto Israel in his days. He shall build an house for my name, and he shall be my son, and I will be his father, and I will establish the throne of his kingdom over Israel forever. Now, my son, the Lord be with thee, and prosper thou, and build the house of the Lord thy God, as he had said of thee.
So we can see it was tasked to Solomon to build the house. David couldn't build it because David had shed blood abundantly, as he says in verse 8. He says, But the word of the Lord came to me, saying, Thou hast shed blood abundantly, and hast made great wars. Thou shalt not build an house unto my name, because thou hast shed much blood upon the earth in my sight. So he didn't allow David to build the temple. All right. So we're gonna cut it right there for today. We will pick it up next Sabbath. We're halfway through. We'll pick it back up, reading about Solomon's temple being destroyed. Write this down. Solomon's temple was destroyed by Nebuchadnezzar in 586 BC. I said it earlier, reminding you about it again. So when we pick up again next Sabbath, we're going to be reading about the Chaldeans, the Babylonians coming in and basically destroying Israel and destroying the temple. All right. And then we're going to get into how Cyrus came about and rebuilt the temple. And or actually he gave the command for it to be rebuilt. Only small portion of it was rebuilt in his time. And then there was, going to read about the history of the nations hindering the rebuilding of the temple. And like I said, we're going to go into the history of what's his name? I can't even get the name out right now. In the New Testament, when he has the temple converted, or he builds his own temple. Why can't I get this man's name out? Give me a second. Look at my notes here. My mind just went blank. Herod's temple. There we go. I don't know why I couldn't think of it. Herod's temple. So then we'll get into, all of that. Get into the prophecy of the abomination of desolation in Daniel. We're going to cover all of that next week, and then finish it up with what it actually means spiritually that we are the temple of the Most High God. All right. So again, when we start back up next week, we're going to be getting into the destruction of the temple that Solomon built. Let's go ahead and go to the book of Ecclesiastes, chapter 12, and verse 13 through 14.
The book of Ecclesiastes, chapter 12 and verse 13. Let us hear the conclusion of the whole matter. Fear God and keep his commandments, for this is the whole duty of man. For God shall bring every work into judgment with every secret thing, whether it be good or whether it be evil.
And with that, we're going to say Shalom, Most High in Christ blessed, and we will see you next Sabbath. Enjoy the rest of the Sabbath, And Most High Christ bless to you.